Imagine being the black sheep of the most feared family on the continent, only to die a pathetic, miserable death. And then, you wake up as a toddler. That's exactly where we find Jin Runcandle, the 13th son of the Runcandle House, a legendary clan of swordsmen who rule through absolute, brutal strength. Most people would be thrilled to be born into that kind of power. But for Jin, it's a death sentence. In his first life, he was the disgrace, the kid with zero talent who was basically discarded like trash. But this time, he remembers everything. He isn't just relying on muscle memory. He's made a literal pact with Soldaret, the god of shadows. While his brothers and sisters are obsessed with their boring standard sword auras, Jin is out here playing with forbidden dark magic and ancient entities that shouldn't even exist. And he's not doing it alone. He's got the Black Dragon Murakana legend who should be dead sleeping in his basement and snacking on his food. Talk about an upgrade from his previous life. The Runcandle family is a shark tank, and Jin is the only one who knows exactly which sharks are going to try to eat him. He's not here to be the disgrace anymore. He's here to tear the whole hierarchy apart from the inside out. So, how does a kid who was supposed to be a nobody turn into the most dangerous threat his own father has ever faced? Let's jump back to the beginning. Honestly, imagine being born into a family where your only worth is how well you can hold a sword. That is the Runcandle life, a world where power is the only currency that matters. And if you are born without it, you are basically garbage. Meet Jin Runcandle, the youngest son who was supposed to be the family's biggest embarrassment. He had zero talent for the sword, and his own brothers never let him forget it. But that failure was just the start. Because Jin isn't playing by the normal rules, he is playing with shadows. He makes a deal with Soldaret, the god of shadows, and suddenly the kid who couldn't swing a blade becomes the most dangerous threat his father, the patriarch Chiron Runcandle, has ever seen. So, how does a kid who was supposed to be a nobody turn into the most dangerous threat his own father has ever faced? Let's jump back to the beginning. They rule through force, combat, and conquest, acting as the ultimate predators of the world where the sword is a charging rhinoceros. Absolute control is their law, and they maintain their position by ensuring no weakness exists within their ranks. Jin Runcandle, the youngest son, was born into this legacy, though he stands surrounded by shadows that mock his existence. During his childhood selection ceremony, Jin chose Barasada, the founder's sword, destined to become the next patriarch. He expected a future of fame, but that reality shattered because he possessed zero talent in swordsmanship. The clan branded him a disgrace, mocking him as the worst dunce of the Runcandles because his skill fell far below their average. His brothers taunt him for swinging a wooden sword, demanding to know why he avoids real weapons and wondering where the Barasada has gone. Jin remains silent, but his brothers continue their harassment, threatening him because they want to break his spirit. He endures their physical blows, choosing to feign indifference or sleep to avoid further conflict. They laugh at him for studying swordsmanship theory, believing that a useless person should never be given the chance to improve. They snap his wooden sword to stop his progress, ignoring his plea to give it back. Amidst the scattered parchment of his failed theories, his tormentor looms over him, seizing him by the throat to crush his remaining spirit with screams of terror. The bully yanks Jin's hair and mocks his nanny's teachings, vowing to teach him a lesson in manners. Despite the agony, Jin endures the assault, clinging to the desperate hope that relentless effort will one day earn him the recognition he craves as a true Runcandle. This fragile conviction finally shatters when the clan banishes him at 25, casting him out to wander until he arrives at the gates of a mysterious, looming castle. Deep within those shadows, a voice promises him mercy in acknowledgement of his commendable persistence, drawing a faint, bitter smirk from Jin. Years of aimless exile eventually lead him to his master, a fateful encounter that reveals the hidden talent dormant within him all along. He begins to manifest forbidden magic, defying the clan's strict prohibitions to seize the strength necessary for his survival. 3 years of grueling training follow as he attempts to channel mana from the natural world, until a sudden, overwhelming surge of energy catches him off guard. In the ensuing void, a mysterious entity manifests, identifying itself as Soldaret, the Master of Shadows, and offers a contract to the broken exile. The void surges with an overwhelming rush of dark energy, pulling Jin into its ethereal depths. Soldaret offers to negate all curses, but red chains suddenly constrict Jin's chest. A childhood grudge manifests as the source of this binding, with Soldaret revealing that it has long suppressed his true potential. This restriction, a curse known as Bladed Illusion, is the hidden shackle on his talent, leaving Jin stunned as he clutches the magical orb. Captivated by his spirit, the god vows that no such curse will ever harm him again. Even as the chains tighten and force a violent reaction from Jin, Solderette pledges to watch over him, setting the stage for his transformation into an extraordinary magic swordsman. Jin stands in silence, his fingers tightening around his sword hilt as he prepares to test this newfound capability. Stepping into the night, he unsheathes his blade and swings it with newfound force, offering a polite farewell to the retreating shadows. Everything unfolds exactly as predicted. The sword feels light and effortless in his grip, finally shedding the weight of his reputation as the family's worst dunce. Layering his strikes with shadow magic, he unleashes a surge of energy that shatters the boundaries of his former limitations. The failure he once embodied ceases to exist, and a smirk touches his lips as he realizes his years of struggle have finally borne fruit. Journeying later through a misty forest, he freezes when a desperate, chilling scream pierces the darkness. He discovers a man collapsed and bloodied amidst the debris, his victim struggling to comprehend why his own body has suddenly turned to lead. The weight pinning him down is suffocating, and as life bleeds away, he calls out to Solderette for salvation, while a dark silhouette looms over his broken form. Consciousness flickers back, bringing with it a stinging weakness that forces him to wonder if this pathetic failure is truly how his story ends. Frustration burns beneath the debris, turning his thoughts toward the cruelty of a second chance that seems destined only to lead to this ruin. Yet the haze suddenly clears as his mind hardens. The absolute will settles over him, granting total immunity to the mental interference that once plagued his spirit. He blinks, disoriented by the sight of his own family's men and the impossible presence of Gilly standing among them, signaling he has been pulled back to the past. From the shadows, a mysterious witness watches him arrive at the selection ceremony, where the realization hits. He has been granted a return to the very beginning. Now confined to the body of a 1-year-old, he crawls toward the legendary Barasada, fully intent on claiming the Patriarch's sword with deliberate purpose this time. The hall erupts in stunned silence, followed by a roar of disbelief as the youngest son lays his hand upon the blade, marking the sudden shift in his destiny. Whispers ripple through the crowd, thick with shock, as they watch him stand before the weapon and rewrite the fate of the entire Run Sandal line. With the ceremony finalized, immediate orders are barked out to transfer the child to the isolation of the Storm Castle. Inside the bleak confines of Storm Castle, Jin reaches for a book, his small hand trembling as he struggles to maintain his grip. 6 years of isolation have already passed within these walls, leaving him to endure 3 more until he reaches his 10th year. He sits in the gloom to read an ancient text, hoping to pass the time. A piercing, sudden cry rings out, drawing Gilly into the room where a dead bird lies splayed upon the floor. The sight triggers an immediate realization in Jin. Such calculated cruelty in this remote fortress can only be the work of his brothers. 2 figures step from the shadows, their laughter echoing through the hall as they hover over the carcass, revealing themselves to be his brothers. Daytona and Haytona, the 9-year-old twins, openly admit to leaving the bird as a twisted gift meant to taunt their younger brother. Jin keeps his expression cold and stoic, yet the casual malice radiating from them leaves him deeply disturbed. Memories of their future as notorious murderers surface, though he finds their present capacity for cruelty even more chilling. He gently cradles the bird's body, questioning the senseless need to destroy an innocent life, while the twins mockingly warn him not to shed a tear. They crowd into his space, goading him with taunts and demanding to know where he has hidden Barasada, desperate for a reaction. When they bark a command for him to speak, his patience finally snaps. He refuses to remain their punching bag any longer and grabs a hand. A sharp command escapes his lips, his aura flaring as dark, jagged shadows manifest to reveal the depth of his intent. He strikes with a sudden surge of blue energy, landing a precise, powerful blow that forces the twins to howl in pain. Shock and rage distort their faces, but Jin presses his assault with a glowing fist, determined to shatter the cycle of his past silence. Declaring that he has reached his limit, he lashes out and strikes them down, the sword now acting like a charging rhinoceros beginning its hunt. Dark energy surrounds him as he warns them to stay out of his sight. Khan bursts into the room to find the twins sprawled on the floor, and as Jin grips his own clothes, the weight of his secret hangs heavy in the air. When Khan demands an explanation, Jin dismisses the incident as a fight between the brothers, successfully masking the supernatural origin of their injuries. Though Khan praises his fierce spirit, Jin rejects the suggestion to call a doctor, instead commanding the man to follow his lead. Elsewhere, a mysterious figure infiltrates a restricted zone in search of mana, while Jin stands before a rain-slicked grave, feeling like a mere pawn in a grand design. As the storm intensifies, Khan urges him to seek shelter, but Jin refuses to budge, forcing his brothers to suffer the full consequence of their arrogance. Khan bows to the order, Yet as they move, he notes the lingering residue of mana rather than aura, recognizing a power far more dangerous than any blade. Realizing this goes beyond his sibling rivalry, Khan calls for a horse, intent on reporting the strange occurrence to the Patriarch immediately. Watching him ride away, Jin knows that an observer like Khan cannot ignore the presence of magic. The truth of his power is a charging rhinoceros that refuses to be hidden. He turns his gaze to the shadow energy swirling across his palm, the undeniable mark of his contract with the God of Shadows. Testing the connection, he channels shadow energy to confirm his contract with Soldaret remains intact in the second life. Because he now possesses absolute immunity to curses, he avoids the bladed illusion entirely, proving the family's former dunce is gone for good. He resolves to rewrite his future, fully aware that the definitive step in his new path is a direct confrontation with his father Chiron. Following the swift defeat of the Tona twins, a command ripples through the clan's ranks, ordering every flag bearer to assemble. The atmosphere turns lethal as the order to kill spreads, prompting the elite forces to converge on the youngest son's location. With 7 flag bearers and 200 knights ready, the Runcandle forces prepare for battle. Anxiety mounts among the siblings as they ready themselves to march toward the Storm Castle. A warrior emerges, radiating an aura of pure intimidation as he prepares to test the arrogance of his opponent. Mary asks Diffus if he understands the reason for the sudden assembly, noting that even Luna remains in the dark. They wonder if the order concerns their youngest brother, as Deepus questions why their father would bother returning for him. Mary recalls how he chose the Patriarch's sword, yet they cannot fathom what Chiron truly intends to do. When Luna arrives, the siblings express shock that their father would personally visit the boy to test his utility. Jilly adjusts his collar, gently suggesting that the Patriarch is simply making his rounds to see his children. Knowing Khan has reported everything, Jin braces for the consequences of his magic drawing his father's direct scrutiny. Jilly frets as the Patriarch returns to investigate the mysterious power, desperate to know if the boy is a true asset to the clan. The gates open and the guards stand at attention to signal Chiron's arrival. He steps inside with an imposing presence, immediately demanding that the twins, Daytona and Haytona, be brought before him. With a cold gaze, Chiron demands a full account of the altercation, forcing his sons to explain the incident. The twins blame Jin and accuse him of using forbidden magic to turn their father against him. Chiron silences the siblings and warns them that their weakness will not help them survive in the Runcandle family. Jin watches him reproach, mindful that this Genesis Knight and demigod remains the strongest in the era, yet utterly devoid of warmth. The Patriarch cares only for the family's prosperity, leaving no space for a son he once dismissed as a talentless failure. Everything is different now, however, and Jin vows to become an apex predator who cannot be ignored as he steps toward the confrontation. He reaches the glowing doors where the others wait, his sudden arrival stirring shock among those gathered to witness the meeting. Stepping through the threshold, Jin offers a formal bow, acknowledging the supreme authority of the Patriarch. Chiron questions the distance in his son's tone, but upon hearing Jin treat this as an official clan matter, he directs the boy to address him simply as father. When asked to recount the brother's transgressions, Jin's eyes burn with a cold intensity, leaving no doubt that his path is fueled by vengeance. He asserts that a true Runcandle always returns what they are given, be it grace or resentment, and vows to strike down his enemies without hesitation. Dismissing the onlookers to ensure total privacy, Chiron presses his son to reveal if he has truly surpassed the trial set before him, while whispers ripple through the gathered clan members. A heavy tension settles over the room as the private audience begins. Chiron confronts him about the strange energy reported by the twins, warning that practicing magic will only stifle his potential to reach the pinnacle of the sword. He demands an immediate explanation for the forbidden power, making it clear that such a transgression will not be tolerated lightly. Aware that the unique influence of Soldaret cannot be hidden from a man of such caliber, Jin prepares to reveal the truth. He manifests the dark energy before his father, daring to ask the Patriarch to bestow a name upon this power that is neither magic nor aura. Chiron stares in stunned silence, his composure shattered by the undeniable presence of the shadow god manifesting behind his son. Chiron stares in silence, finally recognizing this as the ancestral power the founder once wielded. Jin offers a formal, stiff farewell to the Patriarch before turning to leave the chamber. Behind him, the shadow of the deity looms, confirming that this force is indeed the fabled shadow energy. He senses the lingering resonance of Barasata, realizing his awakening is inextricably tied to the god of shadows. Watching with intense scrutiny, Chiron confirms that this unique manifestation marks his youngest son as a potential successor. The Patriarch reveals that Soldaret is the very deity who aided in their house's founding. a contract once held by the legendary Temur. Since the god vanished following Tamar's death, this entity now seeks to reclaim its place within the Runcandle bloodline through Jin. Curious about the hierarchy of such immense power, Jin dares to ask if Soldared is stronger than his father. Chiron admits he lacks the answer, having never crossed blades with the god himself. A faint smile touches Jin's lips, recognizing that this rare, blunt honesty is the hallmark of the world's strongest man. Impressed by the boy's audacity and the sudden shift in their dynamic, Chiron acknowledges the weight of the inquiry. Finding his visit unexpectedly worthwhile, he demands to know how his son intends to wield this dark gift. Jin pledges to use it for the family's prosperity, though the words feel like a hollow shield against his own true resolve. Chiron lets out a sharp laugh, dismissing the vow as an amusing lie while piercing through the boy's actual intentions. A menacing presence lingers in the hall, accusing Jin of discarding his siblings to prioritize his own ascent. Chiron demands the unvarnished truth, yet Jin understands that his father cannot be swayed by mere platitudes. He stands firm, declaring that he intends to claim this shadow power for his own singular purpose. A rare glint of approval crosses the patriarch's face, finding this selfish ambition far more intriguing than hollow loyalty. Chiron issues a cold warning, promising to keep a watchful eye on his youngest son's progress. Left alone in the wake of the audience, Jin trembles as the residual pressure begins to fade. He draws a ragged breath, the sheer relief of surviving the encounter momentarily clouding his focus. It becomes clear that his father's expectations have shifted, marking a favorable turn in his precarious position. Reflecting on the life he once knew, he recognizes that his current path is fundamentally rewritten. He clenches his fist, summoning a swirl of dark energy as the blade of a charging rhinoceros begins to sharpen. Without warning, Mary appears, thrusting a heavy, wrapped object into his arms. She grins and tells him to boil and consume the contents to grow strong quickly. Grow strong enough to grow strong quickly. Abandoning him with the weight of her luggage, she leaves him to puzzle over why she singled him out. He gasps, unwrapping the package to discover a pulsating, blood-stained phoenix heart. Disbelief washes over him. He is stunned that the seventh flag-bearer would entrust such a volatile relic to a child. As the visitor continues on her way, Jin is left to grapple with the deadly gravity of her expectations. She acts out of a singular, predatory desire to groom a rival worthy of her own strength, knowing this gift will force him to evolve. Examining the pulsating organ, he recalls that a phoenix's heart serves as the catalyst for a 6-star mage to perform a summoning safely. He senses the potential to manifest the creature himself, his resolve hardening like a rhinoceros charging toward an untamable future. Gilly enters to prepare the meal, her voice hushed as she urges him to consume the rare elixir before its potent energy fades. He catches his brothers hovering nearby, baiting them with a cruel offer. They can share in the feast, but only if they complete a menial task first. Terrified of his burgeoning reputation, they scramble to dig in the dirt, their movements frantic and fueled by the fear of what he might do if they refuse. While they toil, he retreats into the shadows, channeling the dark energy of his contract to prepare for the path ahead. The pair returns breathless and caked in mud, demanding the payment he promised for their labor. He gestures toward a microscopic portion left on the table, offering a cold smirk as he reminds them that he never specified the quantity. Standing alone in the rain afterward, he considers their half-hearted efforts, finding that they served his purpose regardless of their resentment. He turns his attention to the nearby cavern, noting the intruder's work was adequate enough for him to begin breaching the stone wall with 1-star magic. A wave of frustration washes over him as his pent-up mana searches for an outlet, and a sharp smile cuts across his face as he manifests a brilliant green glow. He unleashes a spell that shatters the earth and sends rocks levitating around him. The debris clears to reveal the entrance to the secret library of the Runcandles, a gate locked firmly by ancient chains. Memories of his past life and his cold, lethal intent flicker through his mind as he recalls the specific trigger phrase required to undo the seal. He utters the words clearly, identifying himself as a child of the clan arriving to console Murikan. A blue magical seal erupts into existence above him, bathing his focused expression in a cold, ethereal light. He enters the hall and declares, "It's huge, but I'm putting this restricted space to good use." He stares at the figure in the tank and asks, "What is that?" Dark energy begins to coil around him, surging in response to the intense atmosphere of the chamber. Strange scales materialize on his chest, prompting him to wonder if the captive entity is even human at all. As his hand makes contact with the surface of the tank, a sudden, jolting realization leaves him breathless. The true weight of his objective returns to him. He is here to console the legend who has slumbered for so long. Looking up at the figure, he asks if he is truly standing before the Black Dragon Murikan. The man inside the capsule recoils in visible terror, confirming that the historical account of the founder defeating the dragon was no mere myth. Shaking off the shock, Jin demands to know the location of the secret tomes, his shadow energy coiling to force an answer. Instead of finding tomes immediately, he scans the shelves, desperate for the knowledge required to cement his new path. He attempts to parse the Run Candle family records, but the dense 3-star magic theory proves far more elusive than he anticipated. To avoid detection by the clan, he begins transcribing the essential texts during each visit, wary of the consequences of stealing them outright. Midway through his late-night studies, an unnatural shift in the air forces him to whirl around, revealing a stranger lurking in the library. He panics when an intruder bypasses the defenses, demanding, "What are you?" Recognition dawns when he identifies the intruder as the Black Dragon, Murakan, a legendary figure who remained dormant throughout his entire previous life. Attempting to defuse the tension, he adopts the guise of a subservient child, hoping to appease the family's ancient guardian. The ruse fails instantly. Murakan erupts in a fit of rage at being labeled a mere servant, sending the boy scrambling back in terror. The dragon vents his fury against the Run Candle lineage, his irritation peaking as he reveals he only stirred from his slumber after catching a specific scent. Cornering him against the shelves, the dragon demands an explanation for why the boy reeks of pure shadow energy. He insists that such power is reserved exclusively for those who hold a contract with Soldaret, just as the founder Temur once did. Realizing his own presence triggered this premature awakening, he decides to gamble on the creature's curiosity. A confident smirk forms on his face as he braces himself to address the sharp-toothed, agitated dragon. He reveals the truth of his connection to the God of Shadows, manifesting a dark orb to prove that the pact is his to command. The dragon stares, stunned by the revelation that Soldaret's contractor has returned after a millennium in the form of a mere child. Deeply shaken, the legendary beast drops to his knees, acknowledging that their alliance is the only way to honor the ancient pact made with their god. Jin asks, "A promise with Soldaret?" before adding he is too disoriented to speak. Murakan struggles to steady his mind, apologizing for his disorientation before formally introducing himself as the Black Dragon. He proclaims his role as Soldaret's representative and sworn companion, identifying himself as the Guardian Dragon. As his aura flares with predatory intensity, the dragon pledges his loyalty, vowing to remain by the boy's side as his protector. When the dragon demands his identity, Jin steps forward to introduce himself as the youngest son of the Run Candle clan. He stands his ground before the Titan, barely able to process how easily he has secured such an overwhelming source of strength. It becomes clear that this entity once ruled the mountains until he was bested by the founder Temur, yet they had actually shared a bond of friendship. Jin realizes his own lack of a guardian in his previous life was simply because the dragon had remained locked in a deep, centuries-long slumber. With the beast now awake, Jin begins visiting him regularly, bringing snacks to exchange for the knowledge he needs to cement his status as a predator. Months of quiet study follow in the secret library, during which Jin repeatedly presses his companion for history, despite the dragon's fading memory of events from 1,000 years ago. Jin sets down 7 strawberry pies, sighing at the dragon's insatiable craving for the fruit. When asked about his progress in the library, he explains how he painstakingly transcribes the forbidden tomes to avoid detection. Admitting he barely grasps 30% of the complex theory, he finds comfort as his mentor scoffs at the laziness of other children. He reaffirms his identity as a Run Candle, knowing that survival among 12 siblings and cruel elders demands relentless preparation for the destruction of his enemies. Reflecting on the founder's legacy, he wonders if even the legendary Temur could have parsed these ancient texts at such a young age. The dragon dismisses his doubt, noting that even the founder struggled with such theory, and reminds him that knowledge is only half the battle. Encouraging his ambition, the mentor insists that, as a contractor of an infinite god, he possesses the potential to surpass even the founder if he remains patient. When Jin confesses his ignorance regarding Soldaret's true nature, the dragon prepares to enlighten him on the deity's identity. He reveals that the god is known as Infinity, a title that mirrors the boundless growth awaiting his young contractor. To solidify this potential, the dragon offers to impart a new technique, the Shadow Energy Release. He cautions that utilizing such volatile power without proper discipline invites disaster, demanding that Jin first master the fundamentals of mana manipulation. The intense training session begins, forcing the boy to focus entirely on the delicate art of controlling his internal reserves. Jin questions the necessity of such rudimentary exercises, but the dragon insists that balancing shadow energy and mana is critical, warning that mastery could take 3 years. Jin finds this timeline unacceptable, as he cannot afford to wait that long. When Murakami demands fundamental control, Jin conjures an orb saying, "I've just always been able to do it." Demonstrating the true nature of his power, the dragon reveals that because all shadows in the world were born from Soldaret, Jin can eventually command them all, grinning as he challenges the boy to grasp the full potential of his contract. Meanwhile, Luna oversees a mission, confirming that her knights will complete their objectives after clearing 5 more areas. Ordering a rest period for the next 4 months, she pauses to wonder what 9-year-old children typically enjoy. 6 months after this training begins, the Tona twins finally depart Storm Castle, leaving him in newfound silence. He celebrates his 9th birthday with a quiet cake, instructing Gilly to share the treat among the small staff present. Kan interrupts the celebration with a tense expression, but before he can deliver his report, an unexpected visitor descends upon the courtyard. Luna Runcandle, the first flag bearer, appears without warning, leaving both him and Gilly frozen in shock. As a 9-star knight and the eldest of the 13 siblings, she's the white whale who typically avoids the succession war entirely. Because she never showed interest in her siblings, their relationship is that of total strangers, making her sudden arrival deeply suspicious. He wonders if she discovered his forbidden visits to the secret library, so he approaches her with extreme, guarded caution. Observing his growth, she dismisses the need for prior notice, noting that a sister hardly needs an invitation to see her younger brother. She senses his obvious discomfort, leading him to admit he is on edge since this is their first time meeting this closely. She considers the Jin might suspect her of upholding clan traditions, then asks, "Pardon?" She acknowledges that she momentarily forgot that even at 9, he is still a Runcandle, and bows in a formal gesture of regret. She asks him to dismiss his guards, seeking a private conversation to address the tension between them. Though taken aback by the request, he senses no immediate malice and signals for them to step away. Luna then reveals she has come to offer a warning, leaving him to wait in breathless anticipation for her next words. She cautions that his recent defiance has drawn the eyes of all their siblings, who will track his every move the moment he leaves these walls, hopeful that he might avoid the succession battle. She stresses that the path to power is a dirty, dangerous affair he should avoid for his own sake. He stands stunned by her genuine concern, wondering why she never offered such guidance in his past life if she simply deemed him too pathetic to notice. Contemplating whether his siblings ignored him before only because they never viewed him as a threat, he remains internally steeled for the fight to come. Jin thanks her for the sentiment, but firmly declares that he has no intention of sitting out the conflict. Despite her insistence, he reveals that he has already been the target of an assassination attempt, making retreat impossible. Luna demands to know which sibling orchestrated the strike, but he admits the culprit remains hidden in the shadows for now. He reassures her that he is safe and expresses his gratitude, realizing for the first time that not all his siblings harbor hatred for him. Saddened to see how deeply he is already entangled in the family's brutality, she offers him a comforting, maternal embrace. He returns the gesture briefly before shifting his focus, asking her to hold her questions while he deals with a sudden, encroaching presence. She pauses, noting that it is his birthday, and the tense air softens into a moment of unexpected, quiet reflection. She reaches into her garments to reveal a blue gemstone pendant. Fastening the necklace around his neck, she instructs him to shatter the gem if he ever faces a crisis beyond his control, promising to arrive the moment it breaks. After offering her warm wishes for his 9th birthday, she lingers to share a slice of cake with him. Once she departs, Jin touches the sapphire pendant with a faint smile, feeling the weight of the new treasure against his chest. Murakami emerges, immediately eyeing the piece and identifying it as a powerful artifact once belonging to the Demon King Orgel. The dragon explains its immense value, noting that the relic grants resistance to 5-star attack magic while simultaneously boosting the wearer's own magical potency. When Jin asks how he sensed his sister's energy from such a distance, the dragon suggests that Luna likely sensed his own presence during their meeting as well. Though the realization brings a flash of fear regarding his hidden secrets, Jin finds comfort in knowing he can trust a sister who clearly values his survival. Murakami catches a trace of another powerful energy and falls silent to focus on his meal, while the memory of Luna's vow to stand by his side remains etched in Jin's mind. Reflecting on his years at the Storm Castle, Jin recognizes that he has secured his father's acknowledgement, a phoenix heart for Mary, a bond with his eldest sister, and a partnership with a dragon, all as he gathers the strength to reach the apex. Turning 10, he pushes his limits to leverage these newfound advantages, declaring his lethal intent before unleashing a potent blue energy strike that lands with a violent shockwave. Preparations for his departure to the main estate begin with a high-speed sparring match, where he expertly blocks his instructor's heavy punch, the impact creating a brilliant shockwave between them. The instructor pauses, clearly impressed by the boy's technique, but Jin realizes this session is actually an assessment for his father, a suspicion confirmed when he spots a mysterious cloaked figure reflected in his own eye. After the mentor concludes the session with a respectful bow, he promises even more intensive training. Jin accepts the challenge, remaining under the man's care until the time comes to finally head for the main castle. Alone once more, he tests his progress by touching a candle flame, finding it feels like nothing more than warm water. The phoenix heart from Mary is already working wonders, allowing him to absorb its power with ease. Having successfully assimilated half of the elixir's energy, he prepares for the journey, but as Gilly begins readying their things, he remembers one final errand and slips away for a quick stroll, leaving her confused. Jin finds Murakan waiting in the castle, reminding the dragon that the time has come to leave for the main estate tomorrow, an announcement that fills the creature with anticipation. When asked how he intends to follow, the dragon scoffs, vowing to shadow him in secret, relying on his status as a legendary black dragon despite his current diminished strength. Stunned to learn the true extent of his guardian's decline after a millennium of slumber, Jin listens as Murakan promises that his own vitality will return in tandem with the boy's growth. Murakan urges him to reclaim the legacy of the original magic swordsman, a path Jin knows the family once walked before losing their way. He reflects on the forgotten truth that the Run Candles abandoned magic centuries ago, bound by a humiliating vow that the modern clan has long since erased from memory. Chuckling, the dragon muses that his presence would surely throw the household into a panic, though he jokes that they should be honored to host the noblest being in existence. Jin remains doubtful about how the family will react to such a secret, but he ultimately accepts the dragon's promise to remain hidden, to ensure his absence from the library goes unnoticed. Murakan plans to weave illusions with dragon tongue, brushing off Jin's worries about being discovered. Though the dragon admits maintaining such magic is taxing in his weakened state, he vows to push through the exhaustion for Jin's sake, prompting the boy to offer a brief, dry request for a bit more respect. The mood lightens as Murakan produces a pie made of fresh strawberries and stolen alcohol, jokingly demanding an introduction to Gilly, claiming that the effort of raising Jin was worth it just for the snacks. Later, as Gilly warns him that the main castle will be far more treacherous than the isolation of Storm Castle, Jin reaffirms his cold resolve, earning a silent, steadfast pledge of devotion from his loyal nanny. Standing ready to embark, Jin is met by the Guardian Knights, who arrive to escort him toward the Garden of Swords. He accepts their protection without hesitation, knowing that reaching the main estate is the only way to accelerate his path to power. As the carriage departs, the cold night of October 30th, 1790 settles in, and Jin sheds any lingering hope for a normal life in favor of his ruthless ambition. As the horses panic, he reassures his companions, "We must head to the Runcandle main estate." The journey stalls as heavy snow blankets the road, forcing the group to consider sheltering in a nearby village since the storm has rendered the teleportation gate impassable. The carriage is suddenly ambushed by 20 assailants, including mages and warriors. Watching his escorts engage them, Jin quickly assesses that none of the attackers exceed a 7-star level. Sensing a deeper threat, he warns Gilly to exit the vehicle at once, acutely aware that the Runcandle Code strictly forbids a Guardian Knight from leaving a child of the house unattended. He realizes with chilling clarity that one of his own protectors is either a traitor or an imposter, compelling him to order Gilly to flee before the carriage becomes their tomb. Gilly immediately pledges to shield him at all costs, launching an explosive counterattack as the chaos of the battle erupts around them. Struck by a sudden attack, Jin struggles to compose himself as Gilly worries about her punishment. Gilly frets over the impending consequences of their flight through the snow, but Jin cuts her short, insisting they focus solely on surviving the immediate threat. He remains fixated on the skirmish unfolding ahead, suspecting that these combatants might not be enemies at all, but allies sent to intercept them. An unnatural silence descends upon the forest until a commander bellows for his troops to fortify the flank, desperate to secure the young master. Recognizing the distinct emblems of the Yuta family and the Black King Squad, Jin realizes this ambush was an inevitability he had to face. A scout confirms their position, triggering frantic orders among the attackers to prioritize his capture above all else. Mureka, captain of the Black King Squad, steps forward to intervene, claiming his unit was dispatched by the Runcandles to ensure Jin's rescue. Two warriors confront the assailants, their fury boiling over at the sheer audacity of those who dared to threaten their charge. Jin, however, sees through the deception. These fakes are far too clumsy, as true 7-star knights would never struggle this significantly against such opponents. When challenged, a masked man mocks the Runcandle soldiers, defiantly refusing to reveal his true employer to what he calls a family dog. Jin orders, "Cut an arm off the other, then bring him to me." A mysterious entity strikes the assailants with a flash of light. The white-haired warrior screams in frustration as he is wounded, his movements hindered by the lingering effects of a curse. Blood sprays across the pristine snow as the warrior is struck down, his defenses shattered by the overwhelming counterattack. Jin drags the fallen soldier through the slush, taunting his enemies for the fatal mistake of underestimating a run-candle predator. Knowing that a run-candle nanny requires at least the strength of a 7-star warrior, Jin views the struggle with cold detachment. He scoffs at the attackers, pointing out that it would take multiple 8-star knights to truly threaten his kin. Even as the survivor shrieks that the family's reign is nearing its end, Jin retorts that he welcomes the end of their current rule, for he intends to forge a new era under his own name. A surge of dark energy pulses through him, bracing his resolve as he prepares to navigate the treacherous path ahead. When the captive shouts, "Zippel," Jin focuses on the revelation. He knows the Zippel clan, the masters of magic, are the age-old rivals of his house, whose philosophy stands in direct opposition to the run-candle pursuit of the sword. Dismissing the man as a mere follower, unworthy of a real interrogation, he signals Gilly to dispose of the pathetic creature. The captive screams in rage at such arrogance, but Jin notes that this messy, disorganized ambush hardly matches the legendary precision of the Zippels. Sensing a deeper, more calculated hand behind this failure, his gaze shifts, causing a nearby woman to flinch in sudden dread. Gilly quietly confirms that his orders have been carried out, leaving the frozen battlefield behind. Turning to Marika, the captain of the Black King squad, Jin acknowledges that his survival was only possible because their timely distraction drew the enemy's fire. Marika pledges his protection, marveling that such a 10-year-old shows such confidence. He ponders the attacker's frantic words, realizing the ramblings of a dying man may hold a deeper, more calculated truth. Marika orders his squad to maintain absolute discretion until they reach the teleportation gate, silencing their confusion with a sharp, authoritative glare. With a subtle signal, he directs his men to depart, leaving the fallen decoys behind as a gruesome warning for any comrades who might come searching. Amidst the desolate, frozen landscape, he commends Gilly for her swift elimination of the remaining threats. They decide to seek shelter from the worsening blizzard at a nearby village. Though he notices her hands still tremble with residual tension, he reassures her that the failed escort was not her fault, pointing out that even a master like Khan would have struggled to anticipate such a layered trap. Despite his words, she offers a soft apology, her demeanor echoing the same unwavering loyalty he remembers from his previous life. Back then, she endured the same scorn he did, standing by his side even when they were both cast out into the cold. The memory of her final, tearful apology for failing him haunts his mind, driving him to offer her kindness instead of the harshness she expects. He tells her she must harden her resolve, reminding her that as his only guardian knight, she is the shield he needs to survive the coming storm. She nods, her expression sharpening as she resolves to cast aside her doubts and focus entirely on the path ahead. Seeing her spirits lift at his genuine concern, he finally lets out a sigh of relief as they move toward the village lights. Upon reaching the inn, he checks them in, his mind already racing as he narrows down which individual could have orchestrated such a sophisticated betrayal. The identity of the culprit behind the fake knights becomes clear as the transformation sorcerer Bouberet Gaston emerges in his mind. Known for achieving a level of perfect disguise that even dragons cannot replicate, he caused widespread chaos in the previous life before his eventual arrest. Jin recognizes that this involvement complicates his journey, yet he firmly refuses to seek an alliance with a man who once crossed blades with him. Exhaustion finally claims him, and as he drifts off to sleep with Gilly standing guard outside, a sudden, startling presence manifests within the room. A noisy black cat scratching at the window jolts him awake, and his shock deepens when he realizes the creature is actually Murakhan, who has successfully tracked him to the inn. Jin mocks the dragon for choosing such a ridiculous disguise, but the beast snaps back that taking a human form would have immediately alerted the Run-Candle Knights to his presence. Gilly bursts in to check on the young master, but Jin steps in to stop the confrontation. Gilly freezes as the stranger calls her his strawberry pie, a bizarre nickname he uses to express his bashful affection. Jin sighs at the awkward scene, knowing the unpredictable dragon will only make their situation more difficult. He quickly clears the air, revealing that this man is none other than Murakhan, the ancient black dragon of the Run-Candle family. The dragon, currently in his smaller form, smugly insists on his nickname for her, while Jin gestures for them to keep the interaction moving. After Gilly bows to apologize for her initial aggression, Murakhan laughs and embraces them both, declaring her perfection. She finally realizes that Jin's constant demand for snacks was merely a cover for his companion, and she asks to sit down to process these revelations. Jin offers a sincere apology for his past deceptions, prompting Jilly to express her genuine pride in his magic, his contract, and his bond with the dragon. With her loyalty reaffirmed, Jin instructs her to keep the dragon's awakening and their true relationship a secret from the rest of the clan. Murakhan promises to remain by his side, though he and Gilly immediately bicker over the commotion caused when his transformation wore off. Watching them, Jin realizes that neither his guardian nor his nanny acts with any sense of normalcy, leaving him wary of the chaos they might create. Elsewhere, the Black King squad concludes their mission at the middle teleportation gate, earning praise and promises of reward from the family. Back in the city, an inquisitive stranger asks Gilly why a woman of her immense talent chooses to serve as a mere nanny for the youngest son. She dismissively shuts down the inquiry, and after a brief tense silence, the man apologizes for crossing the line. Upon reaching the gate, Jin presents his run candle emblem to secure their passage to Cologne and the Hwafester allied forces. The staff immediately grants them premium seats, and after a short wait, they continue their journey. As Jin prepares to rest, Jilly approaches him, fully committed to his side as they march toward the apex of the world, relentless as a charging rhinoceros. Jilly frets that if the clan discovers Murakhan, they will never tolerate his forbidden use of magic. Jin promises to keep their secret safe, but the sudden appearance of a golden dragon emblem on a nearby traveler stops him cold. A white-haired girl steps forward flanked by armored guards, and Jin realizes with a jolt that he is staring at the Zippel clan. As she takes a seat, he recognizes the face from his previous life and curses his luck for crossing paths with her in Hwafester. Gilly bristles at the intrusion, while the girl sneers at her opponent's strength before reaching out to pet the black cat. She warns that drawing steel against a run candle is a fool's errand, noting with curiosity that Jin remains unnervingly composed. Veridin Zippel introduces himself, and Jin identifies the era genius magician who once seemed entirely unreachable. Jin mocks the boy's supposed intelligence, coolly warning that his guards would be missing fingers had they moved any faster. Veridin laughs off the violent threat, but Jin presses the point, advising against igniting a reckless war between their two houses. When Jin asks if their respective fathers would truly care about a child's spat, Veridin falls silent, finally grasping the cold reality. Veridin eventually agrees to drop the matter, while Jin demands absolute silence until their transport is ready to depart. Veridin watches him with a mixture of curiosity and amusement, finding the prospect of a rivalry with a run candle thrilling despite the deep-seated hostility between their houses. Jin finds the Zippel heir's unpredictable behavior exhausting, his patience wearing thin as he realizes everyone around him seems to have lost their minds. As the gate begins to hum with activation, Veridin offers a parting remark, but Jin dismisses the overture, cold and firm in his intent that they never cross paths again, before they vanish in a flash of blue light. Upon arrival at the destination, he is met by Pedro, the second-place housekeeper, who steps forward to offer a formal introduction. Walking toward the Garden of Swords, Jin recalls his past life as a failure, bitter that his previous, desperate efforts yielded nothing for a family that values the sword like a charging rhinoceros. He steels his resolve, acknowledging that even within these cold, exclusionary walls, he will carve out a life that finally commands respect. Approaching the inner sanctum, he encounters a line of imposing figures until Rosa, the Black Panther, steps forward to greet him with a chilling reminder of how much time has passed. Jin presents his companion to his parents, casually claiming he is taken in a stray, while the cat stares up at the patriarch with unnerving intensity. Chiron praises his son's newfound confidence, asserting that a run scandal must always claim what they gain with absolute certainty, a demand that weighs on the boy like a lingering shadow. When his father demands to know the creature's origin, Jin keeps his composure and proudly declares that the creature's name is Murakhan. Outrage ripples through the kin and parents, who demand to know why he dares to attach the family name to a common beast. Though Gilly attempts to offer an apology for the feline's presence, one single word from Chiron instantly plunges the hall into silence. The patriarch fixes a piercing gaze on his youngest son, demanding to know why he would link their legacy to a mere cat. Jin stands his ground, explaining that he intends to take full responsibility for the first life he has ever claimed as his own, requiring a name that carries genuine weight. When Chiron questions if he truly grasps the gravity of their name, the boy offers a steady, unwavering confirmation. He vows to exact retaliation against anyone who dares insult Murakhan, a bold declaration that earns him sharp, hostile glares from his assembled siblings, telling his father that he has a natural talent for slaughtering enemies. Jin watches as his family instinctively raises their guard against him. With the cold assessment complete, the patriarch and his entourage turn and depart from the chamber. 4 years pass until in 1794, Jin stands as a 14-year-old 2-star knight and low-ranking cadet. Garen Altamir signals the end of the morning drills, reminding him that a session with Luna is already scheduled. Skipping the communal meal to avoid his siblings, Jin instructs his subordinate to relay his absence to Lady Rosa. Belub Schmitz, a 13-year-old commoner, arrives shortly after to deliver his food. Jin recalls the boy's inevitable fate of being expelled for falling behind in his training. While Bellup expresses earnest gratitude for the shared meal, the young master curtly tells him to drop the repetitive thanks. He advises the cadet to carry himself with discretion and absolute confidence, reminding him that he serves as a member of the Rungkandel Guardian Knights. Cadets discuss their poor grades, while one observes the boy's pure personality and suspects mistreatment. Watching him, the observer recalls how that same boy, once trained in the Heron sword style and forced into Bement service, eventually spiraled into a merciless murderer whose life ended in a bitter, shocking suicide. Determined not to let that tragic fate repeat, Jin shares his meal with the boy and vows to guide him, ensuring he avoids the expulsion that once defined his misery. He turns his focus to his own growth, measuring his current progress, 2-star shadow energy, 4-star mana, and 2-star swordsmanship, with a firm goal to reach 3-star skill within 2 years. Luna finds him there, noting that while his daily routine remains consistent, he must fundamentally alter his approach to his training if he hopes to reach the next level. She commands him to abandon his physical sight and look instead with his mind's eye, forcing him to engage a methodology entirely foreign to his experience. As she pushes him to withstand the mounting pressure, she emphasizes that for any true master of the blade, cultivating the mind's eye is the most vital step of all. Despite his low 2-star rank, she orders him to keep his eyes closed throughout the ordeal, leaving Jin to wonder why she is forcing such an advanced technique on someone so far from the 7-star threshold. He struggles to grasp the sensation, hindered by the restriction against using his aura, yet he chooses to place his absolute trust in her guidance. When the grueling session finally concludes, Luna grants him leave to rest, and he offers a sincere word of gratitude for her mentorship. Watching him recover, she reflects on his relentless focus, already convinced that he possesses the potential to master this technique long before the expected timeline. Upon returning to the estate, Jin finds the knights on edge, their nerves frayed by the impending sparring match that will dictate their future as official Guardian Knights. The instructor confirms the high stakes, explaining that this match serves as the primary evaluation for their rank and the fastest path to advancement, explaining the palpable tension among the candidates. A soldier interrupts the tension, reminding Jin that today is critical because Rosa requires him to defeat 10 upper-rank cadets to advance to intermediate training. Watching Bellup struggle with his recurring anxiety, Jin realizes that while he can easily prevent the boy's expulsion, the cadet simply lacks the necessary confidence to thrive. The instructor steps forward to announce 3 sparring rounds, declaring that the 10 most outstanding victors will face Jin one by one to test his mettle. As the cadets clash in the arena with the high skill level that earned them their positions, the instructor systematically dismisses those who fail to make the cut. Jin prepares for the challenge, fully aware that he must overcome 10 consecutive opponents to reach his goal, and engages the first fighters with focused, clinical precision. Having already dismantled 8 fighters, he knows only 2 more wins stand between him and success, leaving his latest opponent crumpled on the ground. Mesa Milcano, an elite cadet destined for the Guardian Knights, steps into the spotlight, determined to prove her superiority in this decisive match. Jin accepts the challenge with a confident smile, and as they clash, their blades meet in a flash of intense, high-speed combat. Though he notes that Mesa has clearly improved, Jin remains certain of his victory, even as he accounts for the fatigue of facing 8 prior opponents. Mesa grows visibly frustrated, questioning why he relies on such simple techniques and fearing he is deliberately disrespecting her by holding back his true power. Incensed by his composure, she pushes herself to her absolute limit, while the surrounding crowd watches in shock as the sparring intensity escalates. Jin momentarily wonders if she might be a fellow regressors who knows the future, then offers a faint smile and strikes again, forcing her to dig deeper to surpass him. Once the final bout concludes, he offers her a polite farewell, his sword already poised like a charging rhinoceros, ready to strike at the apex. With a final, high-speed movement, he pins his opponent with his blade, leaving Mesa staring in shock as she fails to comprehend the sheer speed of his strike. He discards his wooden weapon, confidently asserting his dominance. He knows he must eliminate any obstacles to his plans, vowing to dispose of anyone standing in his way. Mesa realizes he systematically targeted the same spot on her blade, a feat of precision that leaves her questioning how such tenacity is even possible. She wonders if this is the true essence of a rung candle, vowing to train harder to defeat him next time even as her repeated failures leave her visibly frustrated. Observing the remaining trainees, he knows he is not yet strong enough to face all 10 at once, but by securing an overwhelming victory against Mesa, he plants a seed of fear in them. He fosters the misconception that a head-on fight is disadvantageous, a strategy that succeeds perfectly as Garen congratulates him and confirms his advancement to intermediate training next year. Though Garen suggests a break for a meal, he demands one final spar before stopping, already locking his gaze onto his last target. He calls out Bellup, who stands in stunned silence, hesitating as he is gripped by terror at the sudden, aggressive challenge from his young master. Screaming at the group of wounded soldiers, he rebukes their weakness and demands they step forward, intent on shattering their complacency because survival in this clan demands absolute strength. As Bellup steps into the arena, he wonders if he was chosen specifically because of his weakness, perhaps hoping to break him down and rebuild him, while Jin reflects that changing the past might truly be possible. He tells Bellup that despite his fatigue from fighting 10 men, he still insists on this duel, declaring that he will be the stronger one and forcing the cadet to prepare for the clash. Jin lunges forward, imbuing his strike with red energy to push his limits against the hesitant cadet. Bellup staggers back in shock, barely processing the sudden, overwhelming force of the young master's advance. A surge of blue energy blasts him backward, but as their weapons lock, Jin offers a rare word of praise for his unexpected resilience. Leaping into the air, Jin strikes with renewed intensity to assert his absolute superiority as a swordsman. Stumbling under the relentless pressure, Bellup struggles to find his footing while a swift, punishing sequence of attacks drives him to the brink. Grinding his teeth against the pain, the cadet steadies himself as Jin reassures him that he will personally handle the remainder of the exchange. A cold shiver runs down Bellup's spine when Jin points out that the last strike could have easily been fatal, revealing this is no ordinary spar. Raising his wooden sword, Jin commands the fallen boy to rise, warning that this display of mercy is a one-time offer. Silence falls over the crowd as Bellup draws a blade wreathed in flames, the sudden eruption of aura leaving every onlooker paralyzed in shock. Garen watches in alarm as the boy channels his energy, prompting an immediate, desperate command for all witnesses to keep the event a secret. Jin smirks at the tension, securing the observer's reluctant silence before turning his focus back to Bellup, who prepares for their final exchange with a fierce grin. The cadet urges him not to hold back, catching Jin off guard with an unexpected raw display of defiance. Screaming that he should have fought first, Bellup brings his blade down with his full strength. Caught by the sheer intensity of the blow, Jin barely manages to parry as their impact shatters the wooden surroundings. The strike leaves the boy stunned, finally realizing he had severely underestimated the true depth of Jin's power. Jin acknowledges Bellup's hidden potential, realizing that the cadet meticulously analyzed every strategy during their spar to match his pace before eventually faltering. Struggling to comprehend the widening gap, Bellup recoils as Jin exploits his mastery of aura to shatter the cadet's wooden sword during their high-speed clash. Jin looms over him with a cold threat of punishment, leaving the exhausted cadet desperate to survive the training year before a sudden rapid movement catches him completely off guard. Jin pins the boy to the dirt and demands he reveal his thoughts. He briefly pulls the kneeling cadet up before landing a final blow, watching as the wounded boy collapses into a pain-hacking cough. Bellup demands to know why the young master stopped the fight, but Jin refuses to explain his methods. Provoking the cadet hurts him too, yet he remains resolute, vowing to strip Bellup of every comfort because forcing him to the brink is the only way to ensure he becomes a predator. Kindness is a luxury only the strong can afford, he tells the boy, urging him to grow stronger so he might survive the hellish path ahead. After offering a brief apology for the harsh lesson, he rallies his companions, just as the training session is abruptly interrupted by the arrival of the midday meal. A knight orders him to fetch his own food, but as he prepares to eat, he stands ready with his shadow energy swirling the charging rhinoceros and apex predator of the world. Deep within the shadows, a creature looms over a cowering figure as the patriarch watches from the periphery, questioning his subordinate about the youngest son's true conviction. The patriarch lets out a sharp laugh, noting the boy's odd paradox of protecting the weak while simultaneously ruling through absolute force, and openly wonders if such a belief carries any real worth. He turns to Khan, ordering him to deliver a message and put the boy through a trial, deciding it is time to assign his first official mission to gauge his true resolve. By January 1795, now 15, Jin hits the 3-star knight rank, and as the school break arrives, the cadets trade their splintered wooden practice blades for real, custom-fitted steel. Searching the family armory for a suitable weapon proves difficult, but Luna intervenes, stepping in to insist that she should choose his first real blade for him. He defers to her experience, trusting her superior judgment to find a weapon that might finally keep pace with his rapid growth as a warrior. She shows him Vale's Slaughter, the prototype for her current blade, Krantel. Jin declines the offer, explaining that while he is grateful, the heavy weapon does not suit his style. Luna claims she was only teasing, though her uncharacteristically stern expression leaves him unconvinced. She falls into a heavy silence, visibly affected by his rejection. She draws the blade, offering the weapon to him with the conviction that it is the perfect match for his potential. Though he recognizes it as the sword he previously claimed, she draws the blade, offering the weapon to him with the conviction that it is the perfect match for his potential. He admires the exceptional craftsmanship of the steel, while she confirms that it remains a true treasure within their collection. Stunned by the choice, he notes that Barasada is uniquely suited for channeling his shadow energy. When he questions her motivations, she observes his lingering discomfort, a reaction she finds deeply disheartening. He denies the claim, but she teases him, asking how he will soothe her distressed heart. She then instructs him to close his eyes for training, adding that there is one final vital lesson he must learn today. Amidst the cutthroat rivalry of their siblings, she tells him he must etch into his heart that some family members love him unconditionally. She explains how she endured a lonely life in the household and now wants to spare him from that same fate. He acknowledges her words with a nod, and she urges him to refocus on his training by using his mind's eye. Later, he proudly shows the new sword to Murakhan, who remains entirely unimpressed by the boy's excitement. The dragon warns that since he is only a 2-star shadow energy, he is far too weak to wield Barasada, which requires at least 3-star proficiency. Murakhan aggressively grabs him, lecturing that he must stick to a normal blade until he reaches 5-star shadow energy. He confidently replies that he only needs 1 year to reach that level, a remark that instantly infuriates the dragon. As the dragon continues his tirade, he suddenly catches a detail that leaves him stunned, prompting him to demand a repeat of the comment regarding the siblings' competition. Startled by his ambition, Gilly rushes over in a panic, pleading with him to set the weapon down as her worry deepens. An aide interrupts the tension, announcing that Instructor Garen requires his presence immediately to discuss a new mission strategy. Realizing his brief reprieve has ended, Jin prepares to depart, knowing this marks the start of his first official assignment. He suspects that his recent climb to 3-star swordsmanship triggered the sudden call, though the timing feels far too convenient to be accidental. The possibility that the family is testing him with a mission typically reserved for much older, higher-ranked cadets weighs on his mind. Instructing Gilly to stay behind with Murakhan, he heads out to meet Garen and uncover the true nature of this task. Upon entering the briefing room, he finds the instructor surrounded by maps and tactical documents, his expression grave. When Jin questions why low-ranked cadets are being deployed to such a dangerous region, Garen ignores the query, forcing him to focus on the briefing instead. He notes that the team is composed of weak or inconsistent recruits like Bellup, making the composition feel like an intentional setup. Convinced that his father is orchestrating this to test his resolve after the duel, he hardens his heart, determined to prove his conviction is immovable. 3 days later, the squad reaches the southern border, tasked with locating Semperville and filing daily reports back to base. Taking charge, he orders his subordinates to address him as commander, fully intending to steer the mission's outcome himself. A scout reports a sighting of the Watertail tribe, a discovery that instantly brings back memories of the beastmen who slaughtered his kin. Reasoning that the presence of the docile tribe suggests the White Wolf clan is lurking nearby, he commands Bellup to return to camp ahead of the rest. He remains wary of the mission's suspicious simplicity, wondering if his father is watching from afar to measure his worth. A sudden, chilling realization strikes him, and his face turns to stone as he vows to hunt down and kill the hidden target. A creature approaches with an offering of food, yet he struggles to reconcile this unexpected kindness with the grim expectations for this mission. He chooses to methodically re-examine the area, but Bellup interrupts him with urgent news that the second group has been ambushed. The team is scattered to survive the assault, forcing him to mobilize his forces immediately to investigate the situation. A survivor reports that humans carried out the attack. Since he knows a mere 3 assailants would never dare strike his house, he assumes a larger force lies in wait. He orders his subordinates to secure the base camp, prioritizing reports of enemy sightings over direct engagement. Pressing forward, he wonders why the enemy targeted the second group instead of his own, vowing to punish anyone who dared lay hands on his family. Finding fresh blood but no bodies, he realizes the group fought and fled, knowing his blade must act like a charging rhinoceros to demand retribution. The footprints suggest a single ambusher, and the discovery of few fester bandages confirms the group was attacked twice before retreating westward. Analyzing the tactical map to track their movements, he remains confident that his enemies will soon be forced to reveal everything they know. The second group arrives, but he notes that Mesa is missing and the number of ambushers has increased, signaling a tightening trap. He instructs Bellet to strike on a signal, utilizing the shadow energy Murakhan taught him to heighten his blade's lethality while masking its presence. He engages the armored foes, drawing his sword to cut through their ranks. He unleashes a flurry of strikes that overwhelm the masked warriors, ending the skirmish by pinning his final opponent to the snow-covered ground. With the immediate threat neutralized, he learns that Mesa has been abducted, prompting him to order the surviving cadets to prioritize their own medical treatment. The defeated warrior cowers and pleads for mercy, leading him to press the captive on whether he serves the Zippel clan. He issues a cold ultimatum: reveal the kidnapper's location and true affiliation immediately, or face certain execution for himself and his kin. After swearing his honor to grant the captive mercy, he receives a confession that the attackers belong to the radical organization known as Kinzello. He instantly recalls the group from his past life as a dangerous terrorist collective obsessed with installing their own puppet as the ruler of the world. Driven by cold fury, he listens as the captive admits they seized Mesa as political propaganda, following specific orders to target female trainees. True to his word, he spares the informant, then draws his blade with lethal intent, ready to hunt down the cowards who dared to take his peer. Calculations race through his mind. Since Mesa was snatched only an hour ago, he orders the cadets to signal for reinforcements while he sprints to intercept the enemy. Though his subordinates beg him not to face 24-star experts alone, he refuses to abandon a fellow cadet, silencing their protests with a sharp command. He charges Bellet with leading the injured to safety, reminding him that a run-candle sword is a charging rhinoceros that knows no hesitation. Ignoring the biting cold, he races through the snow toward the enemy base, determined to reach Mesa and forge his own path as a predator. He quickly calibrates his current capabilities: 3-star swordsmanship, 4-star mana, and 3-star shadow energy aware, that charging 24-star foes head-on would be suicidal. Rescuing Mesa remains his absolute priority, so he suppresses his killing intent and prioritizes stealth, tracking the kidnappers through the thicket. Using terrain detection and wind tracking, he locates the scouts and traps one in a net to ensure he remains undetected. With a sharp, precise burst of energy, he carves a path through the dense forest undergrowth, closing the distance to the meadow where the girl is held. He lunges through the dark canopy, whispering to his own shadow that he will allow himself no rest until he reaches his target. Upon lunging into the camp, the hooded attackers recoil, shouting that he is a run-candle cadet. He ignores their panic, knowing the outcome is already his to dictate. He swings his blade in a sweeping green arc, the sheer impossibility of a Runchenville wielding magic leaving his enemies paralyzed with confusion. Though they scramble to organize a counterattack, he cuts down the nearest guard, briefly wondering if he should have been more transparent with his fellow cadets. As flames consume the brush, the man with the torch screams for his comrades to retreat and tries to build a barrier. Navigating the chaotic skirmish, he flows through the firelight, channeling a searing flame into his steel to overwhelm their disorganized defense. He lands a vertical slash followed by a fire strike, leaving the squad to wonder how he survived. When the lead mage realizes their flames are useless, they pivot to ice magic, weaving a frigid barrier intended to freeze him in his tracks. He mocks their futile efforts, and his magical pendant pulses with an intense rhythmic glow that shatters the incoming ice into harmless dust. The mage stands frozen in terror, watching their power collapse and unable to fathom how a mere trainee could so easily dismantle their assault. The surviving mage stammers in disbelief, but Jin remains resolute, declaring that he will eventually claim the position of family head to secure his own future. He tracks the Kinzello group through the forest, disgusted by their careless trail, and wonders if this is truly the end of his hunt. Scanning the ground for clues, he stays determined to rescue Mesa, knowing the Kinzello hierarchy will keep the guards distracted while they divide their spoils. To create an opening, he prepares a diversion, conjuring fire magic to draw the enemy's attention away from the captive. Flames consume the forest, and as the Kinzello members scramble, he watches, knowing they cannot ignore such a blatant challenge. Chaos erupts as the guards panic, their leaders screaming for mages to use water and ice magic to douse the spreading inferno. With the enemy distracted by the crisis, he slips into the facility, striking down a guard who happens upon his path. He locates a hidden basement and finds Mesa, who looks up in shock and relief to see him. After checking if she can walk, he learns her bindings make running impossible, heightening the urgency of their escape. Mesa urges him to abandon her if the situation turns dire, but he silences her, refusing to let her suffer. They hear a loud impact nearby and immediately move toward the ladder, with him taking the lead to ensure their survival. The ruins shake as a beast emerges from the shadows, prompting the man to note, "They're from a battle tribe as well." Jin recognizes the White Wolf tribe just as one of his companions is struck down while trying to buy him time. The assailant sneers at the incompetence of his subordinates, then demands to know if he caused this destruction. Standing firm, Jin declares his identity as the son of Chiron, prompting the wolf beast to roar in recognition of his lineage. Days earlier, he practiced with his shadow energy, knowing his ability to influence the future relied on mastering this power. Merkin scolded him for being reckless, warning that he would die from shadow toxicity if he failed to control the energy properly. Back in the present, Kugito Truka of the White Wolf tribe reveals himself, eager to claim a valuable hunt. The tribe is a force of 6-star warriors who despise the run candles because the first patriarch once killed their god, Javiere. Knowing he cannot escape while protecting Mesa, Jin prepares to face the beast head-on. When Kujito offers a choice between an honorable battle or a coward's death, he draws his sword to accept the fight. The White Wolf tribesman lunges forward, his eyes bright with respect for the boy's resolve as their blades meet in a violent collision. Jin sidesteps the wolf's lunge, the force of their collision creating a shockwave that rattles the ruins. He leaps back to dodge a strike and grips his sword hilt. Suddenly blinded by a flash of light, he attempts a counterslash, but the tribesman's defense is impenetrable, and he is shoved to his breaking point when the beast retaliates with an explosive, bone-jarring blow. Staring at the looming catastrophe, he decides he must gamble on the one trump card his opponent cannot anticipate, his hidden shadow energy. He refuses to burn Luna's pendant on this specific threat, determined to prove his own strength. Yet he knows his 4-star magic will simply shatter against the beast's thick, enchanted pelt. Avoiding magic is essential to prevent his nearby guardian knights from witnessing a forbidden run candle taboo, so he forces himself to rely solely on his blade. Clashing steel against fur, he abruptly releases his grip on his weapon, feinting a retreat to set up a decisive, hidden strike. They trade heavy, thunderous blows while the tribesman sneers, mocking the boy for a sword style that lacks the signature weight of the run candle black sword. Jin ducks under a hammer swing that shatters the ground and counters with a burst of physical power. The beast lunges again, taunting his prey with memories of a past run candle defeat while preparing to offer the young boy as a sacrifice to the altar of Javiere. Struggling to recall the precise rhythm of his technique, he fights through the exhaustion, reflecting on the bitter irony of risking his life to save a fellow trainee who once wished for his downfall. Caught off guard by a sudden shift in strategy, the tribesman stumbles, blinded and momentarily anchored by a web of Jin's swirling, dark energy. As the memory of a woman's voice asking if he will return echoes in his mind, he finally grasps the true, lethal essence of his family's legendary black swords. As the wolf creature collapses, it stares at Jin in disbelief, but he only notes, "That was a good fight." Suddenly, a sharp agony rips through him, and his body convulses as an uncontrolled burst of blue shadow energy erupts from his veins. Echoes of his clan's voices fill the darkness, mocking him as a useless, shameful failure for his inability to master the very power that defines their bloodline. A dark, spectral figure reprimands him from the void, warning that his lack of foundation makes attempting such a release a path to a heavy, inevitable price. Struggling to remain conscious, he forces himself to his feet, knowing that to succumb to the exhaustion now is to invite certain death. He attempts to stabilize the technique again, but the chaotic surrounding energy continuously sweeps his own effort away, leaving him desperate to grasp control. He pants while his body absorbs the dark power, noting, "My body isn't any different from how it usually is." Despite his depleted state, he resolves to find Mesa, but halts when he senses a presence lurking in the cave, causing a cowering man to beg for mercy. Sember Veal of the Gene Kingdom pleads for his life. "I am Sember Veal of the Veal family," denying any ties to Kinzello. Jin identifies himself as the one sent to retrieve him, causing the man to erupt in relief as the realization that he is finally safe sinks in. Though Sember continues to plead for his life, his frantic cheers turn to the light upon realizing he has been rescued, leaving Jin to watch him with a strange, lingering sense of pity. Sember expresses her gratitude, but Jin cuts her off, insisting he is merely fulfilling his duty as a run candle. She explains that she was abducted while searching for her lover, who she had been convinced was still alive, though he died 2 years ago. She claims to have encountered a figure who looked and sounded exactly like him. Jin realizes this is clearly the work of Bubere Gaston, whose transformation magic allows him to perfectly replicate individuals for deception. Suspecting a deeper link between the sorcerer and the Kinzello organization, he resolves to investigate the matter during his upcoming intermediate training. He plans to visit the atelier in the Kurano Principality to confront the man, marking his second encounter with the sorcerer since leaving the Storm Castle. As she praises his intervention, he deflects the credit to Mesa for summoning the reinforcements, accepting her offer of future assistance before they part ways. Upon his return, Jilly greets him with relief, immediately offering a bath to wash away the grueling exhaustion of the mission. Murikan interrupts their reunion by lunging at him, but Jin playfully tosses the dragon aside to dodge the bite. The dragon shifts to his true form, furious and shouting that using the shadow energy release will inevitably ruin his young master's body. Jin retorts that his life as Solderade's sole contractor is his highest priority, though the dragon remains fixated on a missing strawberry pie. Murikan continues to berate him for his recklessness and for wearing the precious pendant so casually, fearing he will waste its potential against future threats. Remaining stoic despite the lecture, Jin keeps his gaze fixed on the path of a predator. When he asks how the dragon noticed the sword release, he learns his shadow energy has surged from 3-star to mid-4-star, a power spike that demands gratitude towards Solderette. He resolves to seize everything for himself regardless of the cost, even as he notes the list of those suffering from shadow energy. Intoxication has grown to 11. He discovers that 9 individuals succumbed to shadow energy intoxication, leaving only 2 survivors, and wonders if the founder is the only other exception. He is stunned to realize that he himself is the anomaly, as even Tamar would have perished under such pressure. Acknowledging that they share this lethal burden, he vows to master his control and escape that agonizing fate at any cost. As he heads to bathe, an instructor barks that he must starve to stay sharp, but Gilly insists on serving his meal, leaving the man seething with jealousy over the sight of a strawberry pie. Elsewhere, skeptics doubt he could have truly defeated a White Wolf warrior while only a 3-star knight, conceding only that he might have triumphed if the opponent were nothing more than a bandit in a wolf pelt. Anne dismisses the feat as a fabrication, struggling to believe their mother accepted such a far-fetched tale without question. Mew watches with intense scrutiny as he confronts the Tona twins, who shrink back and nervously scramble to validate his account. They whisper about the sheer impossibility of his victory, dreading the implications of his imminent arrival in the intermediate class. His cold presence silences them, prompting his sisters to press their younger brothers to admit their true fear of his growing reputation. Disgusted by their cowardice, the sisters offer their own slaves to the twins, demanding they use them to force him back into his place. The instructor addresses the intermediate class. As 3-star to 5-star knights are all here, there are both newcomers and veterans. Mew and Anne order their brothers to utilize these slaves to suppress their youngest sibling, warning that failure will bring them severe consequences. Reflecting on his mission's success, he prepares to advance to the intermediate class, his shadow energy now firmly stabilized at the 4-star level. Entering his room, he calculates that he must attain 6-star swordsmanship within 5 years to finally command his shadow energy with precision. He knows that reaching 8-star marks 1 as an irregularity, while 9 or 10-star warriors are virtually non-existent, with only one figure in history having ever transcended those limits. He rejects the label of a mere celestial knight, resolving to surpass the limits of history entirely. Preparing for enrollment, he knows the Tona twins already occupy the intermediate class, waiting to challenge him. Jilly warns that while the basic class was manageable, this new environment is a cutthroat arena where siblings turn on one another to survive. He decides to rely on his own brute strength to dominate that competitive space, refusing to play by their rigged rules. Soon, he arrives at the office of his mother, Rosa, after being summoned to discuss his future. She acknowledges his successful mission with a cold nod, finding the results highly satisfying for the clan's interests. Directing him to move into the quarters previously used by Joshua, she notes that the space is reserved exclusively for those destined to be the next patriarch. He respectfully declines the offer, dismissing the opulent room as too extravagant for his current needs. Standing firm by his decision, he waits until Rosa dismisses him after a moment of impatient silence. She wonders if he truly lacks greed or simply possesses too much of it, knowing the room would have made him an immediate target for his siblings. Realizing he saw through her transparent test, she remains deeply curious about his upcoming performance in the class. The next day, the trainees learn that the intermediate class is fractured into factions and will involve constant, forced territorial battles. Standing with his companions, Jin promises that the cycle of harassment will end here, as he intends to suppress the entire faction himself. As the commander orders the rookies to group in threes, a mysterious man approaches to explain the clan's hierarchy. Zed Runcandle, the patriarch's brother and an 8-star knight, oversees the assembly while noting that 27 of this year's 10 new recruits have already dropped out. The instructor clarifies that they only formally assess swordsmanship, leaving the rookies to resolve all internal conflicts themselves, provided no one is actually murdered. Bellowing at the seniors to repeat the family motto, Zed demands they enforce the clan's ruthless standards upon the newcomers. Shadowy figures and senior trainees begin to chant that the weak have no place among the Runcandles, hoping to break the spirits of the fresh arrivals. Jin recognizes the noise as a calculated tactic to demoralize them, noting how the Tona twins are being specifically targeted for their perceived weakness. While soldiers suspect the twins are merely puppets for Ma Yuan, Jin decides it is time to correct their misunderstanding once and for all. As he approaches, the bullies falter in shock, suddenly realizing that relying on the influence of his older sisters will not be enough to stop him. With a sudden, violent strike, Jin severs the arm of a bully, demonstrating that he alone decides who deserves to be hazed. He orders a medic for the wounded Cajun Romero, ignoring the seniors who scream in disbelief. Ignoring a challenger's demand to unsheath his blade, Jin commands them to stay quiet, declaring he will only accept their duel after he finishes speaking with the wounded. He glances at the severed limb, indifferent to the shock around him, and asks why the senior calls the victim his trainee. When challenged on whether the injured man belongs to his faction, he replies that the slash was simply a reaction to the man's murderous intent. Terrified, the surrounding hunters realize they are witnessing a formal hierarchy battle, the traditional Runcandle struggle for total dominance. The bullies who sought to suppress their younger brother now face a power shift, with Jin moving to lead the Tona faction. His impulsive strike has escalated into a full-scale hierarchy battle, a dangerous Runcandle tradition he must now win to survive. After asserting his dominance, he declares his identity to the gathered cadets, ready to defend his newfound status with his blade. He warns the regiment that while they are free to attack him, he will strike back with lethal force at the slightest sign of hostility. The 13th son yields to the elder, who demands to know if the boy truly dares to defy him. Jin affirms his intent, clarifying that his challenge is directed at the elder rather than the twins. Inciting the senior to prepare for a duel, the elder channels a surge of magical energy, threatening to behead him instantly if his justification for this defiance proves insufficient. Surrounded by a flare of blue energy, Jin gathers his power, fully aware that his life hinges on the words he is about to speak. Intrigued by the boy's audacity, the elder manifests a wave of pressure, waiting for a reason that might spare his head. As the tension reaches its breaking point, the elder repeats his ultimatum, his hand poised to execute the boy for his insolence. Jin meets his gaze with burning intensity, explaining that he viewed the elder's cruel hazing of the cadets as a direct assault on his own authority. He challenges the elder's initial demand for a game, setting the stage for a violent and decisive clash. Jin unleashes a powerful glowing strike, his expression hardening as he prepares to face the consequences of his actions. He stands silent, his eyes radiating a cold blue light as he stares down his opponent. Zed confronts him, accusing him of starting a commotion merely because of his unhappiness with the hazing of cadets, and demands to know why he injured a cadet instead of drawing his sword against him directly. Admitting he cannot win against his uncle yet, Jin explains that he targeted Kajin and his brothers only because he doubted his ability to defeat Zed head-on. Zed warns him that he clearly does not value his life, or perhaps he relies too heavily on his status as the patriarch's son. Denying this, Jin states he simply refuses to sit idly by while stronger opponents act, because that is not how a Runcandle behaves. As they walk, he questions if honor is truly eternal, causing Zed to smirk and declare that such bravado makes him genuinely happy. Zed laughs, telling the boy he is truly worthy of the family name. Addressing the gathered cadets, Zed reminds them that the young fighter has just displayed the identity of a true sword fanatic. He yells at the cadets to struggle and never forget their true identities as Runcandles. Recalling the incident from 3 years ago, Zed abruptly dismisses them, ordering their training to begin the next day. Jin offers advice to his brothers, noting they may fear their older siblings now, but questioning if that power dynamic will truly last forever. He vows to kill his opponent, advising those around him to stop focusing only on the present and start considering the future. Returning home early, Jin calls for Gilly to serve tea. He tells her that he has started a hierarchy war against the Tona twins, suspecting his sisters Anne and Mayu are backing them. Jin confesses to hurting a cadet from his sisters, faction of fact revealed by his brother's slip of the tongue, which will likely infuriate Anne and Moya. He explains that his brothers lack the strength to recruit a 5-star knight, as flag bearers like Anne and Mu usually only fight their own peers. though they now play the role of masterminds. He welcomes their scrutiny, knowing that their interference will force him into solo missions where he can finally unleash his full strength without constant supervision. By treating this tension as a strategic opportunity, he aims to rack up his combat records while the sisters remain distracted by their own duties as flag bearers. He prepares to bring his cat along for the journey, though he informs Murikan that the dragon must stay behind to handle other undisclosed tasks. Gilly follows his instructions to the letter, while Jin offers a menacing promise that he will treat his feline companion well. An instructor begins special training for the purebloods, explaining that their swordsmanship is a predatory art defined by raw power, destruction, and a complete lack of hesitation. This formless style relies on the Runcandle family's blessed bloodline and physical superiority, traits that vastly outstrip the potential of any normal human. To escalate the intensity of their training, the instructor introduces the Clear Rock, a device that emits distinct sounds based on the force of a strike, warning the students that the path ahead is lethal. As the instructor demonstrates the harsh, ringing tones of the device, the students realize that their precision and power are about to be tested to their absolute limits. He listens as the instructor explains how the Clear Rock drill refines strength control, mental fortitude, and concentration. Though the drill seems effective, he suspects this simple exercise is far too safe to be the true special training of his house. His intuition warns him before the man with an eye patch swings his blade, rattling the clear rock. Sensing steel fragments vibrating within the stone, he realizes the object is far more volatile than it appears. Recognizing the danger of an impending detonation, he orders his companions to hit the ground, vowing to manage the threat alone. The rock shatters in a flash of energy, leaving him injured and gasping on the floor. The scarred instructor remarks on his sharp instincts, noting that striking the rock with excessive force will always trigger such a blast. As he and the others recover, the instructor stands ready, his immense strength cracking the floor beneath him. The man claims he will take personal responsibility for the boy, noting that surviving such a blast without serious injury is a rare feat among the siblings. When he asks how Luna managed to avoid the explosion, the instructor pauses to consider his response. The man reveals that she did not evade it at all, but rather took the blast head-on, just like the rest. The instructor watches, impressed that the boy remains standing despite the blast, and notes his durability is a rarity among siblings. He then commands the trio to strike the clear rock until they produce a perfect, resonant sound, leaving them stunned by the demand. Back at the residence, Gilly serves tea to the young lady as they discuss the growing suspicion that Mayu and Anne orchestrated the recent attack. The lady wonders if they would truly risk the patriarch's wrath by violating the strict ban on succession violence within the estate walls. Gilly questions if Jin might be mistaken, yet they admit that 5 years of investigation have failed to uncover the definitive truth. Feeling a chill, the lady recalls Jin's fearful childhood, prompting Gilly to suggest they must intensify their surveillance on his older sisters. Gilly frets over the young master's safety, but the lady reminds her she is over 30 and can handle herself. They pause to wonder how he is faring in the training grounds, ultimately trusting that he will survive the impact of the clear stone. Meanwhile, Jin endures the grueling regimen, finding this particular exercise the most physically and mentally exhausting challenge he has ever faced. After swiftly subduing 2 opponents in the sparring ring, he accepts the instructor's decree for a 5-minute break to recover his strength. He uses the time to realize that training requires more than simple control. He must amplify his aura's destructive output to offset his physical limitations. Focusing intently, he sharpens his aura to achieve the clarity needed to shatter the stone, reminding himself that patience is the final key to success. He kneels in the dust, realizing that if his brothers could achieve such feats in his previous life, he must be capable of them too. Jean watches his form, struggling to maintain his position while waiting for the break command, though he finds the lack of rest during training baffling. An observer notes his unique potential, speculating that he might even surpass Luna's legendary records. Nearby, a man in a fur-lined coat contemplates who truly holds the power to intervene in the shifting tides of the clan. He warns his subordinates not to arrive if they plan to collapse from exhaustion, though the Tana brothers prove their lineage by holding out longer than expected. This man is struck by sudden frustrated disbelief upon realizing that the boy is the youngest brother. He laments that if Jin had been born a decade earlier, the youngest son would have already seized the entire Runcandle family in his hands. He sits in solitude, deeply troubled by the missed opportunity that the family's youngest predator represents. 1 month later, at the intermediate training facility, the cadets are summoned to receive their first official mission. They are assigned to guard the Public Blacksmith Association, a task that tests their discipline as rising assets. The third mission is announced, the subjugation of 25 orcs in the Carano Principality. As the list of 10 participants is read, Mesa and Bellop realize the danger of the assignment. Because orcs hunt in packs, the cadets are ordered to harden their resolve and focus entirely on the mission's success. A blonde instructor bids them good luck, knowing the risks involved in sending rookies into the field. Experienced adventurers mock the cadets, suggesting they write their wills before facing such a lethal threat. When a captive mocks their fear, the cadets are goaded into wanting to kill him for his insults. Mesa stops Tamid from lashing out, warning that getting injured before the mission would only hinder their goal. The pink-haired cadet shouts that they must remember they are run candles and must prioritize the mission above all else. They resolve to return only after a perfect success, as that is the only way to silence those who look down on them. The warrior prepares for battle, ready to prove that his sword is a charging rhinoceros. Following the instructor's command, he swings his blade with singular focus, joining his brothers in the relentless cycle of shattering training stones. Daytona recoils from a sudden, violent blast just as Jin turns, his name echoing sharply through the chaotic din of the training grounds. Taking a direct hit to the shoulder, he grunts in pain, yet when his brother offers a panicked apology, he simply demands the space needed to maintain his focus. After a month of grueling refinement, a strange new path seems to manifest before him, manifesting as a series of distinct iron beads in his mind's eye. He perceives the precise trajectory of these incoming projectiles with sudden clarity, realizing his sharpened senses now allow him to evade them effortlessly. Wondering if this newfound perception stems from Luna's cryptic guidance, he steadies himself to test his heightened awareness once more. A sudden order rings out, informing the group of an urgent mission that forces them to prepare for an upcoming diplomatic event. While his brothers openly grumble about the Bement Empire banquet, their uncle cuts them off, declaring they are not there to dance. The uncle threatens them with immediate death should they show any further defiance, prompting them to apologize and listen with newfound obedience. Sent by Mew and Anne to represent the clan, they head toward the Bement Empire, where their uncle commands them to strictly observe the other powerful attendees. He assigns Jin a high-stakes VIP assassination, specifically targeting a man named Alcaro Chenderer. Jin acknowledges the instruction, fully aware of the Ice Palace's reputation as a formidable tower in the Western Sea and the terrifying power wielded by its mistress. Talaris Indorma, the 51st Master of the Ice Palace, is a feared figure known as the Spider of the Abyss who punishes anyone who touches her lovers. Because the Ice Palace remains an independent force, Jin now targets Alcaro Chenderer, who is currently under protection in the lawless zone of Mamit. The news of Mammoth stuns his companions, prompting Jin to question why the Chenderer family would pay to have their own child assassinated. Learning the family would rather kill him than reveal their secrets, Jin resolves to strike at their operations. His uncle is surprised by this lack of hesitation and orders the team to prepare for their departure in 2 days. Afternoon training is cancelled to focus on the mission, though his siblings whisper in disbelief about his destination. When his companions suggest he use his Run Candle identity to avoid trouble, Jin mocks their sudden, uncharacteristic concern for his safety. He warns his brothers that he intends to destroy them upon his return, leaving them rabbled by his cold, predatory confidence. Departing with a smirk, Jin leaves behind those who view his peculiar nature with equal parts amusement and dread. His uncle threatens the Tona twins, warning them that they must grow stronger or face a painful death at the hands of their brother. 2 days later, Jin arrives at the gate, maintaining his disguise to ensure his identity remains hidden while in Mamit. He brushes off farewells from his companions, telling them to focus on their own tasks because he intends to return as an apex predator. Brushing aside their protests, Jin tells his comrades not to worry, promising he will return once his task is complete. Murakan, currently disguised as a cat, urges him to remain vigilant and avoid exposing his true identity. Though Jilly frets over the dangers of Mammoth, he offers a light-hearted promise to bring back a souvenir to ease her mind. He affirms his resolve and rides toward his destination, focused on the mission to eliminate the Ice Palace Master's lover. Upon reaching the lawless zone of Mammoth, he is immediately confronted by a hostile local blocking his path. Stepping into the rowdy tavern, he observes the chaotic atmosphere and steeling his nerves to navigate the den of outlaws. He requests a snack, ignoring the grimy surroundings as he prepares for the confrontation. When a thug attempts to intimidate him with demands to kneel, he strikes the man down without hesitation. The assailant cries out in agony as the sheer force of the retaliation shatters the tavern's tense quiet. As patrons laugh at the sudden chaos, he notes that this city is filled with the exact brand of lunatics he expected to find. He acknowledges that surviving in this lawless den requires a mix of calculated bravery and overwhelming force. Recalling the guidance that once shaped him, He determines to verify his mission parameters personally rather than relying on hearsay. After receiving his food, he notes the local rule against poisoning, allowing him to dine with a measure of ease. When the innkeeper probes for his background, he deflects the inquiry and instead presses for information regarding a man named Stister. The host claims ignorance, so he requests a secure room where he can remain undisturbed by the local riffraff, directing him toward the moonlight. While the man warns that the kings of Mamet frequently visit there, advising against any unnecessary friction, he identifies his target, Alcaro, a sheltered, foolish scumbag who believes he can lure the master of the Ice Palace into a trap. Suspecting the target is currently incapacitated by drugs, he moves to scout the inn's upper levels. From his vantage point in the lobby, he spots Alcaro engaged in a heated argument with his own security detail over his dwindling supply of narcotics. The man begs for more, swearing he cannot last an hour without his fix. His guards remain unmoved, causing Alcaro to lash out with threats of execution once his powerful partner arrives. As the tantrum escalates, one of the guards strikes him with a burst of light to force him into silence. The soldiers voice their clear disgust at having to protect such a pathetic individual. Yet they continue to suppress their true feelings to maintain their duty. Watching them, he gauges their strength at the 6-star level, realizing he must execute the target without triggering an immediate citywide panic. He begins mapping out a silent assassination within the Moonlight Well, committed to completing his contract while bypassing the lethal escort. He slips into the shadows of the Moonlight Well, reaching toward the ceiling to begin his final strike. From the balcony above, a woman with long white hair watches the target's pathetic incompetence with cold disdain. She vows to kill the fool herself, and they depart as blue energy crackles in her wake. One of her subordinates confirms the order, while Jin, sensing the approaching chaos, prepares for the inevitable clash. He accepts the challenge, but as the building is struck, the woman with the snowflake accessory vows swift retaliation. Jin slams his hand down against the stone, solidifying his resolve to act as the ultimate predator of this world. He plans to use magic to terrorize the inn, aiming to combine his 4-star arts and 4-star shadow energy into a 6-star force. Since his shadow energy leaves no trace, he expects no one to suspect a 15-year-old, so he decides to mask the attack as a natural lightning bolt. Jin unleashes his dark power, hovering silently as the shadow energy erupts into a swirling vortex. He recognizes the inherent risk of his plan, yet he smiles while channeling the electricity, ready to strike like a charging rhinoceros. He channels shadow energy into a lightning strike to neutralize his enemies and reclaim the advantage. As the battlefield erupts, a white-haired onlooker watches the clash, realizing they have arrived at the absolute worst moment. Ceres and Dorma observes the carnage, while Jin dismisses the framed accusations against him as trashy lies before deciding to rest until they reach the border. He tells his opponent he intends to kill him, dismissing the threat to the Moonlight Well as he promises to handle the cleanup himself. A masked warrior fears for the Ice Palace, prompting his subordinates to prioritize the lives of their 6 members over the safety of Alcaro. Jin unleashes a final surge of magical energy, blasting his enemies away as the environment crumbles. Chaos ensues as the attackers realize they were tricked by his bluff about Zippel magicians, leaving them scrambling as Hayton reacts to a sudden, blinding light. An ice-based assault shatters the ground, ending the battle and leaving the witnesses in shock. The masked warriors prepare for their final stand, but as the dust settles, they find themselves stunned by the sudden appearance of a mysterious stranger. Struggling to remain upright, Jin reflects that his final thunderbolt reached 7-star power and that his pendant saved him from otherwise fatal injuries. The survivors search for Alcaro while the white-haired woman finds Jin in the sand, urging him to get up and flee before the area collapses completely. With the threat neutralized, the command goes out to round up the survivors and execute Alcaro, as he is no longer of any use. Masked warriors scour the ruins for the mysterious mage behind the blast, determined to capture their assailant at any cost. Jin watches from the debris, his heart racing as he wonders if Ceres, the daughter of the Ice Palace master, will see through his disguise. Ceres glances at the dying man and concludes that since the attacker's goal was clearly Alcaro, she has no reason to intervene. Keeping his head low, Jin forces himself to play the part of a helpless bystander, praying he can slip away unnoticed. She stares down at Alcaro with cold satisfaction, relieved that his death spares her the trouble of dragging him along any further. A nervous warrior steps forward to ask if she is truly prepared for the political fallout that will surely follow this massacre. Landing with a heavy thud, Ceres declares the inn under the absolute jurisdiction of the Ice Palace. She introduces herself as the commander of the Ice Palace's 7 swords, daring anyone to test the weight of her authority. Local thugs attempt to protest, stuttering that the kings of Mehmet, not some foreign palace, hold sway over this territory. Without a word, she releases a freezing surge of energy that turns the air to ice, silencing the room with her predatory presence. She warns the shivering men that any further resistance classifies them as enemies of her house, mocking their hollow bravado. As Jin recalls her fearsome reputation from his past, the local thugs begin to panic, terrified they will be held accountable for the destruction. Ceres maintains the suffocating pressure, forcing the men to pledge their cooperation in hunting for the elusive magician. While they frantically search their own ranks and insist no mages were present, she eyes them with sharp, probing suspicion. Her gaze eventually locks onto Jin, and she demands to know why he is the only one who has failed to evacuate. He masks his features, feigning a tremor of terror and claiming that his injuries have left him unable to move. She scoffs at his apparent cowardice, completely unaware that the boy she dismisses as a weakling is a run candle. With a flick of her wrist, she carelessly applies ointment to his wounded leg, leaving him to contemplate the irony of this unwanted act of mercy. She dismisses the injury as trivial, telling him that repaying her is impossible, so he should simply cherish the memory of the Ice Palace. Jin resolves to move forward at his own pace, bidding her a silent farewell before stepping away as a warrior ready for the road ahead. He decides to take full responsibility for the situation, offering a brief, inscrutable smile before his expression hardens with the intense focus required for his next move. The mission status updates to complete as he strikes down a final monster, forcing a pained, guttural roar from the creature. With 18 targets eliminated, the team realizes they can return without casualties as the remaining orcs have been successfully isolated. A man in a suit explains why he summoned him, while Jin rallies his comrades to return safely and crush the pride of those who mocked their abilities. Mesa warns her companions to remain vigilant as 7 monsters remain, noting that the orcs have become easier to hunt now that they are forced to move alone. They credit their survival to the gods, or perhaps the protection Jin provides, while Mesa watches the carnage with a calm, composed expression. Their group leader rallies the team to stay focused, while nearby, a woman questions a man about his specific role as the administrator. A mysterious black cat watches from the bushes as a panther contemplates the 7 targets left, recalling the day Jin's division received their orders. The leader of the orcs orders his subordinates to roam individually, threatening death to any who disobey, while Jin looms over the terrified creatures. He sternly warns them that he will kill anyone found in groups, commanding them to disperse immediately into the dark. Jin prepares to battle a charging horde, while the cat grumbles that the boy continues to force him into these annoying, mundane tasks. The creature dismisses the significance of Jin being the 1,000-year contractor, yet admits his importance, while a man explains that the city's dungeon is not a natural phenomenon. The man declares he can stop the corruption from spreading further, while the cat watches the group by the fire, resolving to fulfill his duties in this feline form. Deep in the brush, a creature stirs in the gloom, startled by the sudden flash of predatory yellow eyes watching from the shadows. Jin senses an overwhelming presence, and an armored knight emerges from the mist. He weighs the mortal danger, wondering from where such powerful foes could have surfaced, especially while his nearby companions are still only 3-star cadets. Realizing his mana barrier would have been exposed to anyone else, he forces his battered body toward the infirmary to seek cover. A blonde youth sits alone in the darkening forest, staring up at the canopy and wondering if the heavy, oppressive air signals an incoming rainstorm. Jin lashes out at his attackers, demanding to know who will be the first to fall. Just as a headless knight lumbers into view, the beast lunges with lethal intent, but a dragon erupts from the moonlight, shifting its form to prepare for the coming clash. Challenging the entity, Jin recognizes the ancient relic's aura and vows to handle the threat personally. He identifies his opponent as a graveyard giant, baffled by the presence of a guardian of dead gods in this region. Though the situation looks dire, he swears to end the fight in a single breath as the giant lets out a deafening roar, promising his foe nothing but regret. Jin strikes with a surge of blue fire that sends jagged debris flying through the air. His muscles scream in agony, but he suspects the Zippel clan orchestrated this trap and decides to shield the younger cadet from the truth. A mysterious observer watches from the gloom, calculating that if the boy continues to grow at this rate for another decade, he will inevitably possess the strength to challenge the Zippel clan. Standing amidst the smoking debris, Jin freezes as he notices a lingering trace of dark magic that shouldn't exist in this forest. Deep within the conspirators' lair, a man maps out the dungeon break scheduled for 3 days from now. Unaware that a hidden figure is tracking his every word, Bubare Gaston panics as he reports the destruction of his graveyard giant. Yet Bishkel Ibriano of the Kinzello group remains unfazed, already aware of the midnight ambush. Bishkel reveals that a shadow dragon crushed the construct, a chilling sign that the draconic race has intervened, prompting him to order Brubere to hold position while he arranges a secret meeting with the Zippels. Back at the estate, Uncle Zed claps a hand on Jin's shoulder, laughing at the sheer frustration the boy's survival has caused the flag bearers before letting him dismiss his weary unit. Jin offers a curt nod to his subordinates, commending them for their discipline and successful completion of the mission. Throughout the corridors, jealous cadets whisper about his supposed luck, unable to fathom how a cadet of his rank managed to secure such impossible results. Cajun Romero and his companions huddle in the shadows, debating whether to take action against the youngest master, though they hesitate, paralyzed by the fear of acting without an explicit order from Anne. Jean emerges from the darkness, telling them he heard every word of their plotting and leaving the men terrified. He glances at Kajun's mended shoulder, asking with cold indifference if the limb is functioning properly after the healers finish their work. Cajun confirms his arm was successfully reattached, yet he and his peers still whisper insults behind Jin's back to mask their own feelings of insignificance. Ignoring their insolence, Jin notes he is not yet a flag bearer, but he openly challenges the man for acting so disrespectfully in his presence. When Cajun dismisses his recent mission success as mere luck, Jin confronts him, questioning why a capable 5-star knight hides behind gossip instead of meeting him in battle. He demands Cajun raise his blade, insisting they duel without limiting their aura to finally prove their true strength. They clash with explosive force, yet Jin finds the man's attacks underwhelming compared to the lethal predators he expects to face in the future. Cajun strikes with magical energy while mocking Jin's perceived lack of skill, but his overconfidence leaves him wide open to a counterattack. He dismisses the man's bravado as pointless, ready to bring the short-lived confrontation to a definitive end. With a kick and a precise slash, he transitions into an uppercut that leaves his rival reeling, blasted backward by a force far beyond his comprehension. The senior knight collapses, stunned and utterly unable to defend against the follow-up. His aura shatters the 4-star knight's guard, and a final kick leaves the man defeated. Panting heavily in the dirt, the defeated man stares up in disbelief, struggling to process the overwhelming display of skill. He holds his blade against the man's face, revealing he has reached the 5-star rank. As his opponent realizes the magnitude of his error, he explains that he simply never engages in a fight he intends to lose. Maintaining a cold, strategic composure, he stands tall, having calculated the precise outcome before the first blow was even struck. Onlookers rush to the scene, stunned to find that the youngest of the run candles has effortlessly dispatched a seasoned fighter. He remains entirely unfazed by the growing commotion, while the fallen man grapples with the bitter, burning regret of his failure. News travels quickly, and across the estate, family members express shock that a 15-year-old could reach such a level of strength so rapidly. Reports confirm that everyone at the training grounds witnessed an aura that clearly surpassed the 5-star threshold. Disappointed by the collapse of their plans, his superiors react with frustration, their hostility deepening as their control slips. Observers realize he is no longer just defying individual rivals, but is baring his fangs at the entire established order. They begin plotting to dispatch their own subordinates to eliminate him during his next mission, determined to see him return only as a corpse. He offers a cunning smile, fully aware that his meteoric rise makes him the primary target for every predator watching from above. Back at the Garden of Swords, he reflects on his status, noting that only his father and Luna reached this rank at 15, proving that his strength now threatens the foundation of their hierarchy. This milestone confirms his standing as a 5-star knight, a rank matched only by his father and sister at this age, and he wonders if this is the cruel truth of his path. His rapid progression stems from the clear rock drills, where he discovered that pushing one of his 3 core powers inevitably forces the others to strengthen in tandem. Even during moments of shadow energy overload, he manages to carve new pathways for his aura and mana, proving his disparate abilities are now inextricably linked. After carefully inspecting the flowers in his room for any signs of sabotage, he braces for the inevitable fallout, knowing his sudden power will rattle his siblings. This includes Joshua, the primary candidate for Patriarch, who remains a central figure in the succession. While Joshua consolidates authority with Rosa's backing, Jin decides that openly flaunting his achievements is the only way to seize the initiative. He anticipates his fame will spread globally, a tactic Murakan insists will keep his brothers in check, while Gilly reports that Chiron is finally returning to the Garden of Swords. The Patriarch rarely finds satisfaction in his offspring, Though he favored Luna, her indifference toward the throne effectively removed her from the succession. With a hierarchy previously dominated by Joshua, Dippus, and Mary, the entire order is now in flux thanks to this unexpected new challenger. He expects his father to initiate a formal trial and potentially grant him protection, as Chiron has never been one to discriminate by age when measuring a child's true potential. To manage the wave of visitors drawn by his reputation, he prepares to host a banquet, all while planning to investigate the suspicious orchestrated nature of the dungeon break. He warns Gilly to keep a close eye on Murakhan throughout the event, prompting the dragon to grumble indignantly while his obsession with strawberry pie takes center stage. Butlers scramble to process the flood of official letters, including a surprising invitation from the Bement royal family that demands his immediate attention. With the patriarch's visit scheduled for a month away, Jin notices a suspicious silence from his siblings, guessing they are calculating how to neutralize him before his reputation grows any further. The quiet is shattered when a butler bursts in, breathless and panicked, to report a sudden, high-stakes mission assignment, the Kholin Ruins. News of the deployment ripples outward, prompting a leader to berate his failing subordinates, while elsewhere, a figure screams in fury at the decision to send the youngest into Zippel territory, their magical energy flaring with rage. Summoned before his mother Rosa, Jin finds himself kneeling alongside his siblings Runtia, Rhinan, and Vigo. Without preamble, Rosa announces that the mission to the ruins is officially cancelled, flatly forbidding him from going. Her children react with immediate horror, prompting Rosa to scream that she knows they are merely plotting to orchestrate his death, mocking their petty jealousy as she dismisses their complaints. Though they try to justify their actions by citing their harsh upbringing, she remains unmoved by their excuses. She declares that Jin is fundamentally different, having hit the 5-star rank at 15, a milestone none of them ever reached, and admits she only bothers protecting those who prove their worth. Turning her icy gaze toward Runtia, Ryan, and Vigo, she holds them accountable for the disruption, ordering Runtia into self-discipline and stripping Ryan and Vigo of their prestigious swords. Warning them to be grateful she leaves them with anything at all. They crowd around him, demanding to know his next move. But Jin coolly challenges them to admit if they are using their rank to sabotage his mission. Though they sneer at his perceived arrogance, he stays focused on the threat, forcing them to confront how they will resolve the mess they have made. Turning his gaze to Rosa, he waits as she commands him to speak his mind openly. He shocks the room by declaring he accepts the mission assigned by his sisters, clenching his fist as he prepares for the coming ordeal. Aware that the Kholin Ruins represent a territory where the family previously failed, he stands his ground and refuses to back down. A confident smile spreads across his face as he vows that he has no intention of retreating from this fight. He tells his mother that the mission is perfect, arguing that by assigning it, she is effectively acknowledging his capability to handle such a lethal task. She questions if he is attempting to manipulate her, yet he denies it with unwavering firmness. He argues that changing the assignment now would expose the family's internal mismanagement to their associates, even as she warns that his sisters are merely using their authority to destroy him. Admitting he would lose a direct confrontation with his sisters, he views success in the ruins as a way to strike back, turning a deadly trap into a winnable victory. Confident in his plan, he requests a reward, the possession of the swords his brothers have just surrendered, should he survive the mission. One brother offers to hand over a blade if he simply abandons the mission, but Jin internally threatens him, refusing to yield an inch. When they ask why he doesn't wait for his father to return, he snaps that they should have stopped his sisters if they truly cared about his survival, silencing them instantly. Rosa finally agrees to his terms, promising him the weapons if he succeeds, before dismissing everyone from her presence. Left alone, she admits she crushed the other's pride to ensure Jin would not end up like Luna, though she realizes he is already growing strong enough to satisfy his father. He steps through the ornate doors, meeting his siblings' hostile gazes as they wonder if his luck will finally run out this time. She notes his lack of fortune, warning him that he will not be working alone on this dangerous assignment. Jin expresses gratitude to his sisters before departing, his focus hardening as he vows to meet them again once he has secured his prize. Mile and Lima Hass approach him, formally introducing themselves as his assigned companions for the expedition. They apologize for previous transgressions and pledge their service, prompting him to accept their aid while silently choosing to move past their history. Though he suspects these two are pawns of Mayu and Anne, he proceeds with the briefing. Their objective is to retrieve 4 guns from the Kholin Ruins. These ruins sit deep within Zippel territory, a land where the family once slaughtered or enslaved the natives to solidify their control. The Zippel clan now claims to respect the inhabitants, but they merely exploit the survivors as slave labor to maintain the site in an act of performative penance. Jin understands the family hides their true motivation for holding the ruins, which centers on a secret, mirror-shaped artifact. Exposed by a journalist in his past life, the truth is they committed these atrocities to excavate the Fountain of Mana, a relic capable of boosting magic power to the 7th star. Since this mass production project is not slated to begin for another decade, the Zippels have yet to uncover it, and he resolves to seize the treasure first. As the magicians return to the site, his companions confirm they have reached the 3rd warehouse, promising to shield him from the Zippel detection magic. Accepting this report, he chooses to conserve his stamina for the arduous journey ahead. He orders the team to rest for 1 hour, setting the stage for a surprise infiltration. They consume dry rations for sustenance, unaware of the trap being laid for them. Once they settle, he decides to proceed alone, leaving his companions behind to slumber. He slips sleeping pills into their rations, silencing their protests as they realize they have been betrayed. As the men collapse into a deep sleep, he remarks that their uncharacteristic lack of arrogance only fueled his suspicions. Deep in the forest, a hooded figure mutters to himself, questioning if it is natural for a dog to follow its master while repeating a cryptic command. Reaching the 3rd warehouse, he finds 2 guards chatting idly, completely oblivious to his silent arrival. He strikes one guard down instantly, leaving the survivor paralyzed in a state of panicked terror. He lunges forward, his speed and blue eyes overwhelming his foes as he strikes. He discards the distractions and strikes the remaining guard, landing heavily amidst the rising smoke of the warehouse. Finding no additional guards, he inspects a simple lock that is conspicuously devoid of detection magic. He notes the Zippel family neglected this warehouse, then opens the door to reveal a magic circle. Leaving the warehouse entrance, he decides to rest, instructing his team to wake him only upon reaching their destination. He shifts his focus to the magic circle, noting its ability to detect demonic beasts and diseases. He smears an unconscious guard's blood over the seal to bypass its sensors without leaving a trace. Stepping into the room, he remains hyper-vigilant, knowing his true identity must stay buried beneath his mission at all costs. He activates the circle, gesturing for his companion to stand back. As the mechanism begins to glow, he scans the chamber for the artifact, his sword poised like a charging rhinoceros. Suddenly, the room is bathed in a harsh red light. The detection magic has triggered, revealing that the guard he neutralized was not human. The monstrous aura radiating from the body suggests the target was riddled with a contagion or something far more sinister. He instantly activates a wind technique to fend off the 2 beasts, accepting that a lethal brawl is now unavoidable. He shifts his stance to use magic, bracing for a fight as he says. However, he dodges a lunging strike and slashes through the creatures with his blade, feeling the impact vibrate through his hilt. A sudden system notification grants him the cursed eye of the abyss, exposing the monster's twisted agony as he delivers his strike. He charges forward to end them, unaware that Jilly waits for his return. Frustrated by their persistence, he prepares his blue glowing blade, kicking up clouds of dust as he advances with lethal intent. Confronting the beasts, he notes their aura is a dangerous, corrupting power, yet he vows to overcome this test. He realizes with shock that the creatures are regenerating like high-ranking demonic beasts, despite the fact that they were human only moments ago. These creatures, clearly transformed humans, force him to navigate the Zippel-controlled forest clearing where natives suffer under the watch of cloaked figures. He realizes they are living golems, a realization that fills him with disgust as he recognizes this forbidden abomination as a heinous crime. Doubts surface about the Zippel family's true purpose for the Kallen ruins, leading him to wonder if they are conducting illicit experiments as he engages the beasts. Each golem wields 4-star strength, yet their movements lack the refined technique of a true knight, leaving them exposed to his disciplined blade. Targeting the head, heart, and abdomen, he identifies these spots as the likely locations where the core of the living golem resides. A precise strike draws a guttural scream of pain from the monster, though it ignores the wound and continues its relentless, high-speed assault. Frustration mounts as the creature refuses to slow down, forcing him to shift his tactics to find a way to land a definitive killing blow. He dashes toward the beast, but is caught by a powerful counter, realizing that only one vital point remains to be compromised. Determined to end the fight, he channels his focus into a powerful, magical sword strike as the golem lunges to intercept him. The blue energy of his blade pierces its hide with a deafening screech, carving deep into the creature's mangled flesh. Narrowly evading a sudden magical release, he pauses when the creature lets out a desperate, human-like plea for him to end its agony. Standing over the shattered remains of his enemy, he fulfills the request by delivering a final, mercy-filled strike. Haunted by the cruel fate that befell these people, he grips his sword hilt and turns toward the shadows, ready to face whatever lurks ahead. Such a transformation is a fate no one desires, as it reduces a living person to a mere consumable tool, and Jin stares ahead, determined to dismantle this horror with his own hands. He struggles to suppress his fury after witnessing the gruesome reality of Zippel's experiments, as the sight of a decaying victim confirms the depths of their cruelty. Though he realizes his sisters likely manipulated him into this mission, he refuses to retreat, knowing that exposing the truth is futile because Zippel possesses the power to bury any investigation. Because creating living golems is a crime that would trigger an imperial investigation, he knows the rivals will inevitably attempt to cover up, so he decides to gather evidence while he still can. He admits he is currently too weak to solve this problem entirely, but he begins dismantling the security magic surrounding the basin, knowing Zippel will be forced to clean up the chaos he creates. Gathering blue magical energy and fire, he prepares to unleash his power, choosing to handle the situation with explosive intensity. He releases a fiery blast that shatters the basement and its defenses. Elsewhere, an unidentified ally reacts with fury, demanding to know why the family sent the youngest into Zippel territory. Luna confronts those responsible, questioning their motives for targeting her brother and challenging them to justify their actions. She condemns the flag bearers for breaking the unspoken rule of hierarchy battles by targeting a member of the intermediate class, expressing her deep shame in their conduct. When they demand his authority, she silences them, noting they only escaped because they failed to defeat him. News of his success in the Colin ruins reaches the estate, leading him to anticipate an immediate summons from his mother. From the shadows, a mysterious figure dismisses a failed saboteur, mocking the blunder that only served to make the boy stronger. This figure resolves to keep him under close surveillance, noting his total lack of mercy and warning others to fear his cold resolve. Back within the estate, a woman reminds her siblings of their shared blood, even as their schemes against him continue to crumble. She confronts him upon his return, sarcastically questioning if his violent behavior is merely another phase of puberty. Gilly watches the interaction and realizes that these siblings will be no match for him in 5 years, effectively marking their remaining time. The investigation into the assassination attempt narrows, ruling out several siblings and centering the suspicion on Joshua, Dippus, and a few others. Because these remaining candidates are masters of deception, the investigator decides to wait and observe them rather than risk a premature confrontation. He returns home to find Gilly and Murakhan waiting, declaring that he is finally ready to face any challenge that comes his way. Reassuring Gilly that he will soon surpass her strength, he turns to the dragon, who impatiently demands to know if the mission report is finished. He shows them a blue object from the ruins, which Murakhan identifies as a golem's heart. After he explains that the artifact came from the regenerating guards in the basement, he questions what the Zippel clan truly intends by creating such monsters. Murakhan observes the artifact, noting that since the ruins are Zippel property, the clan must be the ones responsible for the living golem. Confused by the scale of the operation, Jin decides to return to Colin with the dragon to personally uncover what the Zippel clan is hiding. Staying with the dragon is the safest course of action, and Gilly points out that their return will force the Zippel family into a desperate cover-up. He agrees, his expression hardening into a cold mask as he vows to slaughter his enemies. Meanwhile, the Haas brothers and Cajun are expelled by the Runcandle family following their failed mission, leaving them to face their disgrace alone. By June 1795, the instructor informs Jin that his rock training is complete and his morning sessions are over, as the patriarch is preparing to issue him a formal pledge. Other cadets watch in stunned silence as he transitions into a trainee flag bearer, a role that grants him the freedom to leave home and operate independently to further his growth. Conrad travels toward the Garden of Swords, grumbling that his youngest son has become a constant disruption to his training, while soldiers prepare the academy basement for an upcoming test. Observers note that Jin's fighting spirit was never normal, even back at Storm Castle. He mastered the Runcandle rule of killing enemies, surviving his siblings' attempts to reach 5-star rank. Chiron muses that Jin defied expectations by defeating a White Wolf tribesman alone, proving the weight of his convictions. He stands in the snow, his dragon-themed armor reflecting a readiness for the impending trials. Jin approaches the estate under a shroud of blue light, his presence commanding an immediate salute from the guards. He marches through the corridors to reunite with his father, who acknowledges Rosa for her successful work in his absence. Chiron notes he barely had to intervene because the children proved capable, a necessity for his long stay in the Black Sea. The boy worries that the guests will be overly conscious of his father's presence. Wondering if this added scrutiny complicates things for the siblings, Chiron invites him inside to share a meal, praising his performance as they prepare to face the assembly. The patriarch summons his other sons, his gaze sharp as he questions them about the swords they were supposed to gift to the youngest. They explain that Jin snatched the weapons after completing the Kalin Ruins mission, forcing them to honor their agreement. Chiron laughs at the boys' audacity, encouraging them to steal the weapons back as Jin vows to leave no trace of his enemies. One observer remarks on his shrewd nature, privately questioning if the boy is truly his own son. The patriarch speaks to him about the upcoming banquet, the first one the youth has ever attended as a guest of honor at the main branch. Jin recalls hiding like a criminal in his past life, contrasting that shame with his current status as he prepares to face the world. Chiron explains that the family only hosts banquets for worthy achievements, confirming his recent successes are highly valued. They estimate 1,000 guests will attend, a 200-person increase from 7 years ago, signaling the family's growing authority. He notes that while other families host large banquets, the 1,000 guests gathered here are uniquely outstanding. After 7 years of hunting monsters in the Black Sea, he asserts that the family's authority hinges entirely on his father's status as the only Genesis Knight. If Chiron were to disappear, he warns that these guests would abandon them, a sentiment echoed by the realization that his father is the sole pillar of their power. Without the patriarch, the military gap with the Zippel clan would widen, allowing them to become the world's dominant force. Jin declares that if the Zippels oppressed them in such a scenario, he would abandon the Run Candies to pursue his own path. He refuses to die a worthless death for an incompetent leader, asserting that his survival is essential to his long-term goals. He reveals he has gathered secret information on family weaknesses by trading back a sword stolen from his brother. He lists the Vernga and Herald families as examples of those using their influence to hide past crimes, noting that many such bladeless weapons remain in secret contracts. Chiron agrees that the next patriarch's negotiation skills will be vital, though he notes the Zippels possess their own share of hidden vulnerabilities. Jin explains that their house alone can justify playing the villain, yet he reiterates that he will abandon the clan and hunt the Zippels if these assets are wasted. His father smiles at the talk of revenge, reminding him that he must stay alive to achieve it. Chiron observes that, while his other children whine or boast, his youngest speaks his beliefs with a clear, level head. Regretting that the boy was born so late, he recognizes the talent Jin possesses. Realizing he only has 10 to 15 years left to hold the seat of the patriarch, Chiron observes his son's development with a critical eye as he prepares to receive the guests flooding the estate for the upcoming banquet. He tells his attendant to wait, while noting that his father's aura feels more intense than ever before as he speaks. Jin resolves to depart the estate immediately following the 4-day celebration to pursue his status as a reserve flag bearer, ignoring the lingering doubts of his companions. A messenger suddenly interrupts to report an uninvited arrival, and the boy realizes he must shadow his father as the balance of power shifts. The air grows heavy with tension as the Zippel delegation appears, their presence serving as an unmistakable provocation against the Runkandel clan. Chiron learns that Andre Zippel has dared to show up without an invitation, forcing him to formulate a cold, decisive response to the intrusion. He commands his subordinate, Heinz, to dismiss the Zippel heir while permitting his entourage to enter, a calculated move to humiliate the rival house. The patriarch warns that any attempt to defy these instructions within the Garden of Swords will be treated as a grave and unforgivable insult. After forcing Andre to comply, Chiron proceeds to the Grand Hall to face the assembly and assert his authority as the master of the house. He addresses the crowd with a startling announcement regarding his eventual retirement, publicly directing the guests to acknowledge Jin as his true successor. With the stage set, he establishes strict rules for the event, insisting that any disputes must be resolved through trial by combat in the arena. Standing in the periphery, the boy watches the unfolding spectacle, acutely aware that the path to war has finally become inevitable. 1,000 influential figures flood the Garden of Swords, their mutual disdain hidden beneath layers of carefully crafted etiquette. Chiron dictates 2 ironclad rules for the night. If a guest cannot kill their rival, they must humiliate them, as victory in the arena remains the only measure of true superiority. Watching from above, the patriarch signals his youngest son, advising him to drag any guest he deems unworthy out of the hall, provided they are strong enough to warrant the attention. Jin acknowledges the command with a sharp grin, only to freeze when his father warns that a single loss will cost him everything from his precious blade, Bradamante, to Gilly's life. This rare, candid exchange leaves Jin stunned, as he never dared to dream of such a moment in his previous life. Yet he suppresses any flicker of sentiment, for he seeks no paternal affection. His singular, burning ambition is to eventually stand atop the hierarchy and surpass the man who currently reigns as the family's apex predator. As the reception begins, sycophants flock to him with hollow praise regarding his 5-star rank, forcing Jin to maintain a polite, impenetrable mask while he scans the room. He deflects their inquiries about his training with practiced ease, signaling his companions to remain composed before publicly declaring that he will personally oversee the next phase of recruit development. The facade of civility shatters when a man lunges forward to seize Jin by the head, mocking his youth and his status as a mere child. Despite the violent intrusion, Jin remains unnervingly still, even as the man sneers that his status as a senior martial artist demands immediate, groveling respect. Jin warns the man that questioning his seniority insults everyone present, reminding him that a veteran should know better than to provoke a run candle. Jin tells the man that Ken family seniority earns no respect here, demanding he acknowledge his mistake and apologize. A companion intervenes to warn the hot-headed warrior that he has narrowly escaped a death sentence, causing him to begrudgingly back down. Wooger mumbles an apology, but Jin notes with a sharp gaze that such reckless hostility will only invite more trouble in the future. Luna steps into the fray, asserting her dominance as the family representative while offering a toast to her youngest brother. She asks how he would handle a 6-star fighter, but he reveals he already anticipated the Ken family's interference. Luna wonders aloud when he picked up such complex political maneuvering, prompting him to admit that he must master these tools to survive his siblings' hatred. Skeptical of his sudden maturity, she praises his talent while musing about which of their kin first realized his potential before the attempt on his life. Weary of the stifling banquet, she prepares to depart, promising to save a dance for him once he is fully matured. Before walking away, she pulls him into a public embrace, effectively signaling her protection to ensure the other guests fear crossing him. The crowd murmurs at the white whale's rare display of affection, while nearby a frantic cry erupts toward the transformation sorcerer. Margiela Iviliano steps forward to shield Brubre Gaston, who pledges his absolute loyalty to her, claiming her presence is only for his sake. Jin turns away from the spectacle, growing tired of the charade as he begins scanning the ballroom for the Zippel agents he knows are lurking. He stops in his tracks, momentarily confused, as a mysterious figure steps forward to offer him a glass of wine. Ceres Endorma of the Ice Palace approaches him, her smile sharp as she recognizes the boy she once treated for a minor injury. She greets him with feigned politeness, acknowledging his status as a rising star of the Runcandle family to test his reaction. Jin remains cautious, his eyes scanning the room as he secretly wonders if he must hunt for the Zippel agents himself. She continues her probe by pouring him a drink while he matches her formal tone to mask his true intentions regarding the incident. Ceres admits a hint of jealousy toward his Runcandle lineage, prompting him to deflect by praising the prestige of her own Ice Palace heritage. While she emphasizes her status as the ruler's only daughter, he claims to find the daily pressures of being the youngest sibling exhausting. Suspecting she recognizes him despite his disguise, his fears are confirmed when she mockingly asks about his previously injured shin. He plays along with a nonchalant shrug, but she shifts to a direct confrontation, demanding to know why he was at the Moonlight Well in Mammoth. She admits she suspected him of being the culprit after her subordinates failed to capture the magic terrorist who escaped their grasp. Jin denies the accusation by highlighting his Runcandle identity, yet she insists that he may have hired a mercenary magician to complete his mission. As the head of the Seventh Sword of the Ice Palace intervenes, he realizes she is convinced he was actively targeting members of her faction. She accuses him of feigning ignorance and demands a duel, threatening to beat him to a pulp if he refuses. Observing that the damage to the Cursed Ones in Mammoth is irreversible, she brushes off his complaints about his busy schedule. Accepting the challenge, he views this confrontation as a necessary trial to survive the dangers ahead. He clears the room of bystanders, keeping only the medical team, and requests swords for their midnight arena duel. They agree to terms. If he wins, she reveals exactly what happened in Mammoth. If she wins, he keeps her presence there a secret. Preparing to take responsibility for the encounter, he lunges forward with a high-speed strike. Ceres immediately unleashes the Endorma bloodline's secret technique, the 10,000 Ice Sword. Surprised she opened with her ultimate technique, he pivots to parry the sudden icy assault. The duel intensifies as she unleashes a flurry of powerful freezing strikes against him. As a 5-star swordsman, he realizes she intends to compensate for their power gap by utilizing her third form. Recognizing she is only a 4-star martial artist, he knows he must end the fight quickly to secure his victory. He counters the frigid onslaught with the strongest secret technique mastered back at Stormcastle. Surging with energy, he meets the gaze of a mysterious onlooker who commands him to prepare for a barrage of questions. The antagonist shrieks that this is his end, unleashing a massive avalanche of ice and snow. Struggling against the aura-infused crystals, he realizes with a jolt that his opponent suffers from a lingering sickness rather than being a monster. She unleashes a freezing blizzard, but her movements lock in shock as he meets her assault with a grin. Ceres feels a sudden, sharp unease, her confidence in the Ice Palace's secret technique wavering as he strikes. He lands a blow that forces a panicked reaction from her as the battle reaches its climax. As the energy clears, a spectator screams for her, fearing the destruction caused by the clash. He regrets using the Attila family's Stormblade, fearing that a 4-star martial artist cannot survive such overwhelming force. Ceres collapses to her knees, defeated and broken amidst the swirling aftermath of the strike. She contemplates her past choices, questioning if she truly valued her life enough to fear death and evade the blow. Looking down with cold resolve, he prepares to finish the fight while she stares in shock. Struggling to process her defeat, he quickly rushes to her side to check for lethal damage, offering a tense apology for the near-fatal strike while her eyes still burn with the desire for retaliation. Though she stood her ground against the incoming force, he recognizes that deep down, her survival instincts remain intact despite her wounded pride. He admits that he would have surely ducked if placed in her position, offering the observation as a slight olive branch to de-escalate the aftermath. She retreats to recover, leaving him to touch the cut on his face as she notices the injury. After reflecting on the near miss, she questions why he consistently risks his own life despite his status as a high-ranking successor. He reminds her that every gain in this world requires a price, and they both tacitly agree to treat their next encounter as a formal, first-time meeting. As the banquet crowd begins to thin the following day, he shifts his focus to the arena duels, using the distraction to hunt for Zippel agents. He intends to scan their magical signatures and, with the dragon's guidance, track down the fountain of mana to sabotage their production plans. The goal of rewriting history consumes his thoughts until a sudden, familiar presence breaks his concentration. He spots a black cat wandering the banquet hall and, upon checking its collar, confirms the creature is indeed Butterfly. A mysterious woman approaches him, claiming she has been searching for him everywhere, though he cannot place her face. She pretends to be heard that he does not recognize her, hinting that her name starts with a V before walking away. She is clearly Veridon, the Zippel heir, though Jin pretends not to recognize her. She insists on introducing herself properly, but he remains detached, intent on hiding their connection to avoid scrutiny. When she boldly grabs his arm, he wonders if this impulsive youth is truly the next Zippel patriarch. She explains she wandered the hall for hours searching for him, unable to use her magic within Runcandle territory. With a smirk, she praises his 5-star rank, boasting that she has already surpassed him with 6-star power. He suspects she is lying as he expected the Zippel prodigy to be far more formidable by 18. She goads him to train harder for a future duel, while he concludes she is not actually hiding her true strength. He tells her to be quiet, noting her cold tone mirrors his father's and demands to know why she dared enter their territory. She claims her presence is destiny, having pestered her uncle to bring her here despite the obvious danger. He warns her to stay silent and mockingly asks if she plans to commit terrorism if he visits a Zippel banquet. She promises she is not there to fight, but suddenly pivots, claiming an unpleasant observer is watching them from the shadows. A man interrupts them to ask if Luna will return, presenting a book of poems he wrote to express his devotion. The poet sips his wine, convinced of his own charm, while Jin decides to investigate the man's bold intrusion and steps closer. Suddenly, the stranger beams and calls Jin his future brother-in-law, a claim that freezes the air and turns the young Runcandle's gaze into a frigid stare. Jin laughs and grabs the man by the collar, demanding to know why he dares mock the Runcandle name. Resentment flares in Jin's eyes, and he signals his guards to drag the fool to the arena, unwilling to let such public disrespect slide. As the man begins to blubber apologies and protest that he was merely expressing his affection, Jin clamps a hand of steel-like grip onto his shoulder. Panic surges through the poet as he wonders if Jin has somehow uncovered his role in the Zippel infiltration from 5 years ago. Standing firm in his tailored formal wear, Jin lets his blue eyes flare with lethal intent, shedding his social mask for the coming physical confrontation. When Jin demands his identity, the stranger falters, finally realizing he must reveal who he truly is. Onlookers gasp and crowd around the arena, their whispers rising as they scramble for a better view of the brewing fight. The audience questions the necessity of this clash, watching as the stranger stumbles, suddenly abandoned and ostracized by the wary nobles. A status window pulses into existence, signaling that Jin has acquired the goddess's protection while the cheering crowd wonders at the identity of this mysterious opponent. Spectators whisper that the stranger is an Ibriano associate, sent to test the youngest Runcandle. When the man demands to be allowed in, Jin cuts him off. "Shut it!" Ignoring the opponent's identity, Jin readies his stance, channeling his internal power to prepare for the next exchange. As he lands a magically infused punch, The audience gasps, wondering if his raw strength has truly climbed to the 6-star rank. He chose this opponent to test his limits, though onlookers doubt the man can endure the fight. Continuing his barrage, Jin forces his opponent toward the edge of the arena, his movements calculated to overwhelm the man's defenses. Bishkal watches closely while the crowd murmurs, criticizing Jin for continuing to batter an opponent who has already been defeated. Margiela sighs in disappointment, demanding that her brother step in to teach the young Runcandle a more honorable lesson. Reluctantly accepting her command, Bishkal moves to the center of the arena, stepping forward just as Jin inspects his fallen challenger. He challenges Jin to a direct duel, recognizing that facing a 5-star knight offers him significant strategic advantages during this public event. Tightening his grip on his blade, Jin accepts the challenge, eager to test himself against the legendary Ibriano swordsmanship that even his father once respected. He finds Margiela's manipulation of her brother darkly amusing, realizing she orchestrated this confrontation solely to observe the outcome of their clash. Bishkal acknowledges his deep care for his sister, so Jin empathizes while demanding he control his servants. He clarifies that the injured man is his companion, Buburi, a transformation sorcerer helping his sister. Jin draws his blade, suspicious of the sorcerer's presence, as Bishkal asks him to overlook the incident. He questions if the man is truly Bubure and wonders about his alliance with the Ibriano family. Deeply frustrated, Jin recalls that Bubure was not tied to the Ibrianos in his past life, leaving the mystery unresolved. Gripping his sword, he reminds himself to stay focused because he is fighting a 7-star knight. Launching a strike, Jin realizes from the impact that Bishkal's strength exceeds his expectations. Bishkal promises an explanation, but Jin compares his swordsmanship to Zed's as he parries. Deflecting a heavy blow, he is pushed back and left struggling in pain on the ground. Spectators mock the Runcandles, claiming no one survives the Ibriano family's sly, unconventional swordsmanship. Yet, the Runcandle sword is a charging rhinoceros. Even if its horn breaks, it refuses to stop charging. Clashing again, Jin suffers an injury and realizes Bishkal is intentionally holding back his full 7-star power. Despite his 5-star rank, he pushes his limits, feeling a familiar surge of power returning as he fights. Jin politely ends the spar, channeling his blue aura as he recognizes the same sensation from his past. The duel concludes with the crowd erupting in praise for Jin, who channels intense blue energy to sharpen his focus as the tension peaks. Declaring his intent to claim his opponent's wager, he lunges forward like a charging rhinoceros to press his sudden advantage. A powerful magical force flares between them, but Jin, now completely exhausted, simply states he is going to take a nap. He channels his power to shatter the air with his blade, then studies its edge. Jin excuses himself only to face an entity that parries his strike. Victory is nearly declared when Bishkal suddenly feels a sharp sting. Reaching up to find a thin line of blood on his neck, an attendant calls out to him, and he adjusts his blazer while coolly preparing for the next encounter. Jin clashes with his opponent, his face pressed against a barrier as he vows to handle it. Unleashing a torrent of blue energy to dash forward, he reflects silently on how the momentum has finally shifted in his favor. Readying his blade, he confronts the mysterious figure once more, forcing the man in the red coat to stumble backward. As the victory is finally announced, Bishkal feels that sharp sensation again and realizes his neck is truly bleeding. Jin reflects on his past miserable death as attendants rush to carry him inside following a sudden, total collapse. The moment his sword broke, Bishkal felt that sharp graze on his throat, finally realizing the lethal danger he just faced. He stands shocked that Jin deciphered his heart sword technique mid-fight, noting that a mere 1/10 of a second decided the outcome. Drained by his final strike, Jin collapses and onlookers whisper, "You're a scary guy." He stirs back to awareness 2 days later, instantly annoyed by the familiar weight of a black cat curled up on his head. Jilly is at his side to confirm his long recovery, explaining that he has been completely unresponsive since the clash with Bishkal. He frets over the missed banquet, but she reassures him that his mastery of the heart sword against such a high-ranking opponent has cemented his legend. Although he knows the technique remains unpolished, he acknowledges that the grueling path Luna forced him onto has finally paid off. Sitting up to assess his condition, he realizes that surviving a duel against a 7-star knight while only at the 5-star level is a monumental victory. Beyond his personal growth, he ponders his complex ties with Veridin and Ceres. Realizing that the conspiracy involving Bubure and Bishkal runs deeper than he feared, he decides to shelve the investigation for now, only to spot a bouquet of white flowers left by Ceres near his bedside. The blossoms symbolize a never-ending fight, an obvious challenge that prompts a mocking purr from the cat watching him. His thoughts are interrupted when Gilly delivers a summons from Chiron, signaling that the time to prove his worth before the patriarch has finally arrived. Jin prepares himself, his expression shifting into a mask of calm confidence. He prepares to depart from the estate, venturing into the shadowed corridors to find his father. Chiron greets him, observing his son's travel-ready attire and questioning his intent to leave the grounds. Since his regression, Jin finds it surprisingly easy to read the subtle shifts in his father's demeanor. The patriarch leads him deep into the family mausoleum, the final resting place for generations of heroes. Chiron explains that Temur, the first patriarch, lies elsewhere due to a lingering ancient curse. This curse forbids all descendants born after Temur from wielding magic, a restriction he acknowledges with a heavy silence. Jin conceals his true intentions behind a polite facade, determined not to let his father's iron will dictate his own path. He reflects on his secret contract with Soldaret just as Chiron announces he will personally oversee the new recruits' training. The patriarch challenges him to harness his unique power to eventually crush his rivals and prove his worth to the clan. Jin declares he will explore the world seeking a prize far more valuable than the mere Runchindle name. Chiron grants him 5 years to return with a definitive answer, whether he comes back seeking recognition or to claim his own destiny. He grips his blade, his resolve hardening as he vows to return and face his father in 5 years. With the meeting concluded, he decides it is time to finally depart the estate. Gilly prepares to join him, but she suddenly discovers an object blocking her aura, leaving her powers temporarily unusable. Though she already knows the risks from senior nannies, she tells him not to worry because her reputation is bound to his success. He apologizes for the burden, yet she insists she will remain his reserve rider until she regains her strength after his test. As they transport their supplies, a system message chimes, granting him a new title and skill for overcoming the trial of death. He reflects on the 5-year path ahead, realization dawning as he prepares to step out into the world. The two figures vanish into the horizon, his sword like a charging rhinoceros as his journey toward apex power begins. Elsewhere, a warrior laments that even reaching the demigod plane was insufficient to crush the Zippel oath. Chiron watches from afar, contemplating whether his son is the only hope to finally liberate the family. As they travel through the dark forest, Gilly questions his quiet departure, noting that Luna must be disappointed. He dismisses the concern, explaining he left silently to avoid a grand, dangerous salute from his cadets, and asks her about their next destination. He explains that most flag bearers head to Mammoth to hunt villains as the most efficient way to build the fame necessary for clan recognition. Reserve flag bearers receive no family support, much like Mary, who earned the title Wind Fury by crushing strong foes in the south. While his siblings typically return within 2 years, Chiron granted him a 5-year ultimatum to master shadow energy before he can come back. He sets his sights on the Arkan Kingdom, though Gilly worries because it lies deep within Zippel territory. Unregistered magicians and warriors there are puppets of the Tessing organization, so he intends to dismantle them to clear his path. Infiltrating Tessing's underground auctions will allow him to secure grimoires and a ring, as such markets often hoard items of unknown value. Since they cannot use teleportation gates and possess only 10 gold coins, they must travel covertly without revealing his identity as a run candle. To bypass these constraints, he tells Murakan to transform so they can fly to the Gene Kingdom, brushing aside Gilly's fears of being discovered. The dragon shifts into his true form amidst blue flames and tells the boy to hold on tight. High above the clouds, a woman with white hair watches the dawn sky, shocked to recognize him soaring on the dragon's back. She marvels at his audacity in using a dragon so soon, lamenting that her cold younger brother left without a word as he charges into the world like a rhinoceros. Jin swears to extract payment from those who crossed him, ensuring every debt is settled with interest. Murakan frantically tends to Gilly, who winces and clutches her stomach, clearly suffering from their turbulent ride. The dragon blames Jin for scaring her, but he retorts, "It's because you were flying weird." Watching the dragon fuss over the trembling woman, Jin urges her to regulate her breathing to soothe her nausea. He wonders if the dragon's abrasive, villainous conduct is merely a defensive reaction to the world's deep-seated prejudice against his kind. A hooded companion signals Jin to secure funds while they hunt their target, leaving a bystander paralyzed with terror at the sudden intrusion. Meanwhile, Sember recalls the banquet, realizing that while his rescue was merely a contract, he remains profoundly indebted to his savior. He offers his services, eager to repay the life-saving kindness he once received. The young man awkwardly offers a farewell, leaving Sember to stare at his own reflection while pondering when their paths might cross again. Suddenly, a hooded Jin emerges from the shadows, silencing Sember's startled cry by revealing he is the one who saved him. Stunned by the reunion, Sember pledges his loyalty, but Jin simply demands the gold necessary to finance his coming operations. He acknowledges the man's confusion, leaving him shocked by the unexpected encounter. By immutable law, reserve flag bearers must conceal their identities, building their reputations through pure merit rather than family resources. Though Runkandle scions are expected to endure poverty while hunting bounties, Jin defies the tradition by producing a heavy pouch of gold to fund his journey. With the gold secured, Jin and Murakhan settle down for a meal. Savoring a luxury far removed from the desperate poverty of his previous life, he offers to answer any lingering questions, though the dragon remains stubbornly fixated on the strange reappearance of a long-lost item. Gilly expresses her sincere gratitude for the sustenance, relieved that his unconventional methods have spared them the typical starvation of wandering flag bearers. He teases her about her reaction to his tactics, firmly denying that securing his own funding could ever be classified as extortion. After noting that Sember has finally cleared his debt, he warns his companion about the dangers of overeating before their upcoming teleportation. Murakhan insists on gorging himself despite the risk of vomiting, prompting the youth to suggest he revert to his true form to avoid motion sickness. He reminds the dragon of the extreme danger awaiting them in the Arkan Kingdom, a region tightly managed by Zippel agents who keep a watchful eye on all dragon activity. Boasting that his name alone is enough to terrify lesser dragons, the ancient beast scoffs at the warning, though Jin scolds him for the recklessness of transforming in public. Reflecting on his unique position, he acknowledges that as the only Runkandle with a divine contract, he is the family's secret weapon, especially since their power rests entirely on his father, the patriarch. He questions how their rivals managed to gather so many contractors in a single generation, suspecting the surge is far from a mere coincidence. Upon reaching the border, they present their falsified identification to the gate guards, posing as simple travelers seeking entry for sightseeing. While waiting for the gate to activate, they observe that their forged documents are sophisticated enough to bypass even the scrutiny of the Special Affairs Division. Stepping into the city, he recalls that 15 years have passed since he last walked the streets of this kingdom. Stepping onto the familiar streets, he observes how the city feels gloomier than in his memories, a direct consequence of the Zippel mage's tyrannical grip on the region. That oppressive atmosphere is shattered when a piercing scream echoes through the alleyways, abruptly ending the eerie silence. While Murakhan grumbles about their dilapidated lodgings, Gilly quickly hushes him, reminding the dragon that Jin has a specific plan in motion. Jin keeps his voice low, warning his companion against flaunting their wealth, as drawing the gaze of unregistered mages would jeopardize their mission. Upon locating a suitable inn, they confront the proprietor, Jet, who lazily stirs from his nap to greet the new arrivals. The man grins, dismissing the trio as a gigolo, a novice, and a maid. As Jet serves them drinks, he hides a predatory intent, planning to drug the guests so they can be harvested for the underground auction house. Jen, having anticipated the trap the moment they entered, suddenly strikes the innkeeper with a precise, low-energy blade to punish his treacherous attempt at poisoning. He kicks the tainted cups aside, his eyes turning cold as he looms over the trembling man. With an icy finality, Jin declares that Jet will die in this room, his blade vibrating with the force of a charging rhinoceros. Jin looms over the terrified innkeeper, telling him he will die here. As the man pleads to wait, Jin strikes him to silence his excuses. Memories of his previous life resurface. He recalls how this same scammer once swindled him of everything he owned, leaving him to survive only by the skin of his teeth. The sting of that past betrayal still fuels his rage, but he stifles the urge to execute him, choosing instead to exploit the coward as a useful tool. The man claims he's a 5-star, but Jin and Murakhan force him to confess the drinks were sedatives. Murakhan prepares to deliver a lethal blow, but Jin holds the dragon back, needing the captive alive to extract the information he requires. He leans in, his eyes cold as he warns the informant that his survival hinges entirely on his honesty, as he has no patience for deception. Frantic and broken, the man spills his history, confessing to a life of scamming, trafficking, and acting as a common street informant. He begs for mercy, blurting out that he intended to sell them to the Tessing underground auction. And Jin immediately demands every detail about the organization's operations. Jet spills every detail about the Tessing auction house, a notorious hub for slaves and illicit goods, and Jin promises him medical treatment by nightfall if he proves useful. Covering the man's hospital bills is a small price to pay for a reliable local contact, though Jin keeps his dagger ready, contemplating whether to end the scoundrel once the utility runs dry. He knows that raw talent alone cannot forge a high ranker, and maintaining his facade as a mere traveler while hiding his regressor status becomes an increasingly exhausting charade. Once a Lutero Magic Federation healer tends to the informant's wounds, the man realizes with dread that he is caught in a cycle of being broken and repaired at his new master's whim. Terrified of the consequences should he dare to betray his captor, the guide leads them through the dark streets toward the hidden entrance of the underground market. At the threshold, Jet calls out to the guards to admit his guests, and they step into the shadows, prepared to dismantle the operation from within. They enter an elegant ballroom, finding an orchestra that masks the syndicate's true business. Handing Jin a mask, the informant whispers that the true power behind Tessing is not Salka, but the elusive spider hand Zala. Allah, a 7-star martial artist, maintains an iron grip on the city's underbelly, masking his vulgar criminal nature behind this veneer of high society elegance. While rumors occasionally link the man to the Run Candle family, Jin and his companions scoff at the notion that his kin would ever stoop to associate with such common thugs. These masked figures whisper that one target remains, the same bastard who placed the curse that once stripped Jin of his swordsmanship. Suspecting a connection to the Magic Federation, he identifies the 9-star curse as the bladed illusion currently binding his own path. Determined to destroy everything, he and his companion set out to uncover Alo's true identity while they hunt for further clues.